a gavel this morning. It's obviously with Ms. Sarah Beth, who's on her way. But welcome to the work session, and I'm Lisa Miller, your vice chair. But I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hyde to begin the work session.
Good morning, Ms. Miller. Good morning, or good afternoon, excuse me, board members, members of community and staff. Thank you for being here today. Rather full work session this morning. We'll begin with the Instructional Coaching Certificate from Grand Canyon University, so I'll invite them to come up if anyone is here from their organization. Doesn't look like they're here, but I'm prepared to go through it. Board members, you may recall that when I first arrived, we were doing community-based meetings and we were talking about developing our new strategic plan. And within that plan was a concept that how do we maximize our efficiencies as an organization, honoring the craft of our highly skilled educators without constantly feeling like we have to pull them out of the classroom to make them coaches. And so we started to discuss a concept of school-based or job-embedded coaching here within the school district as an additional supplement or an extension of the current coaching model that we have. Because again, in this era, this climate where we continue to have large numbers of staff shortages, not only here in Polk County, but across the nation, we need to figure out more efficient, more effective ways for us to maximize the talents of our staff. So by allowing them to stay within the classroom and creating an opportunity for them to coach others, they also develop their own internal skill set. And because they're still associated or tied to a classroom, oftentimes where coaching may go awry is when someone feels like someone's been outside the classroom and doesn't understand how to teach these kids, how to teach my kids, or that you have been disconnected from instruction for far too long, that some of the pedagogy and the methodology that you're trying to get me to emulate isn't necessarily applicable or relevant in this setting. So you also develop a culture within the building of one that that's conducive to coaching, that's conducive to open practitioners, reflective on their practices, and being open to feedback and providing feedback, not only receiving feedback, but being open to providing feedback to others. And so we started a conversation with several of our college universities. I'm very proud of the fact that Grand Canyon University jumped on this concept very, very quickly. And so what we started to do, and this is a little bit about them, I feel awkward talking about GCU as if I'm an alumnus, and I'm not. They were founded in 1949. We have a long-standing relationship with GCU. They are located in the heart of Phoenix, Arizona, and approximately 20,500 grad students and 81,000 online students have been served. More than 270 academic programs, including 200 online programs across 9 distinct colleges, are within their program. So within within Polk County Public Schools, we do have a long-standing partnership with the district, with Grand Canyon University. They are a diamond sponsor for teacher engagement and recruitment. They partner with the Polk Education Foundation. I do know, for example, that their staff are at every single teacher event. So anytime the teacher store is open, they are there volunteering and providing supports. Obviously they market to our staff. They provide a highly effective cost-effective way for our teachers to continue to pursue their academic opportunities, and which directly improves outcomes within the classroom, but also provides us with a talent pipeline. They have a professional development partnership with us. They have complementary professional development that they provide through us. And they have, as I said, a strong standing partnership with Polk Education Foundation and Polk Education Association. They do have a dedicated representative that supports all of our schools. I do know that, unfortunately, she is traveling at this time. Hey,
there she is.
You are here. Come on, come up front to the microphone. Here I am trying to talk about you all.
Right here.
So this is Dr. Williamson?
I'm Shala Williamson, and I work with Carolina. We've been working here for a very long time. I personally have been working with Polk County for about 7 years. We have had 2 reps during that period of time, worked very closely with many of your departments, and we're looking forward to continually partnering with you.
So I put up the coaching certificate, so if you want to go from there.
Thank you. So for the instructional coaching certificate, we have found that a number of teachers, we want to really commend Mr. Hyde for his passion and true desire to create opportunities for tenured teachers and to continue to build their value in their role. In doing so, we believe that this instructional coaching certificate will allow them to continue to take what they have learned over the years and to be able to pass that on to new teachers in a way that will impact not only the teachers but the students as well. This instructional coaching certificate will consist of 5 courses, 15 total credit hours, 6 weeks for each course. The courses will be transferable. This was important to Dr. Hyde to make sure that if they're wanting to advance, complete a master's degree, those courses could be utilized towards that. So some of these courses are transferable to various GCU graduate degree programs. The total cost is $7,825. The cost per credit hour is $580 times 15, which is $8,700. But for what we're trying to do, we've offered Polk County a discount of 25%. That's a total of $2,175. There's a resource fee per course. As we've explained there, 5 times 120, $600. Learning management fee, one-time fee of $550, and a graduation fee of $150. The tentative program schedule. First course, improving teacher performance and self-efficacy. Will start on August 25th. It goes on the remaining courses: leadership in instructional coaching, developing professional capacity, introduction in educational research, professional learning, and leadership in literacy. So this is 5 courses that would run from August 25th, should we have a group then, through to April 5th of 2023. Now, it's important that I explain to you that our university was founded for teachers, and we have what's called a COE promise. The College of Education firmly believes in the excellence of our administration and teaching degree programs. Nonetheless, we understand the challenges a new career in education may present. So since 1984, we have delivered on our promise to provide assistance to our graduates, the graduates of our educators and administrators preparing programs during their first year of teaching. So whomever it is that graduate our program, when they leave, we're not just saying, go ahead. They can always reach back out to us. We have resources in place. If a first-year teacher needs help with reviewing a curriculum or managing the classroom, they can reach out to us if they have forgotten what they've learned 2 years ago, and we will work with them to strengthen that area of opportunity. That's our promise, to ensure that we're supporting them while they're in the classroom after graduation as well.
So I'd like to make 2 additional comments. Number 1, I appreciate the honorary doctorate, but not yet. I'm still working. I may be D at this time. And number 2, please keep in mind, and I don't want this to come across as something new and unique, because this is just an extension of what my predecessor started before I arrived here. As you know, we have a longstanding relationship with the University of South Florida, where we have provided master's degree level opportunities to our staff to earn their reading certificates, and become reading coaches and provide opportunities for entry points into other leadership roles, but also into the administrative ranks. And so this was a natural progression. And again, one where my focus is how do we maximize the talent within the classroom without having to take it out of the classroom all the time. So in these examples, what would happen is a school essentially would be double staffed for a particular role. So you'd have 2 individuals who both would have gone through the program. One would teach the classes in the AM session and coach in the afternoon. The other individual would be free to coach in the morning and then teach the class in the second half of the day. Again, by virtue of that, they maintain a contact with direct instructional methodology and practices, and they build a rapport and relationship within the school setting. It also allows us at times, more often than not, where coaching can run awry with individuals, it's a personality conflict. That my personality is not necessarily aligned to yours, and as a direct result, I'm less receptive to coaching, or I'm less receptive to coach you, because I feel that you're not receptive in receiving and trying those things that I'm trying to educate you on or provide supports for. So this provides a broader spectrum, and so essentially these staff, we would provide a supplement beyond that, but we would be able to maximize our talents and our efficiencies that way by, again, tapping into the cadre of excellent teachers we currently have, but making sure, most importantly, when we talked about the courses, I was very impressed at the course selection and the courses that they were to offer, and we really focused on just 5. This will also be something that we submit to the Florida Department of Education as a request for a certification area for our teachers to earn as well, because I feel it's important for them to get the maximum recognition and benefits professionally as we possibly can. But the focus here on the types of classes is really, a lot of this is adult learning theory as well. taking someone who's a very or highly effective teacher and assuming that they can coach other adults is a myth, and it's been proven to be an ineffective strategy. You have to spend as much time with coaches. They may have the pedagogical background, they may understand the curriculum, they may understand the materials that are being used, they may understand very well the district's process for intervention and remediation and even enrichment and acceleration. But again, being able to relate that to others and understanding how adult learning theory works makes us better coaches, because we can actually tailor coaching to your individual needs based off the conversations we're having, and it makes you more receptive to being able to provide feedback in a variety of different strategies to best align to that person's individual personality and their needs. So as we talked about, this is a proposal. I'll be bringing back to the board formally. It's just part here today to provide an overview and let you kind of think about it, ask any questions you may have. But again, it's an extension of how do we maximize our current talent pool without having to take them out of the classroom, which was a commitment I made upon my arrival when you hired me almost a full year ago. Ms. Miller.
Full year, wow. Okay. I just want to say I'm really impressed with this program because we want to provide tools to the coaches. Sometimes we have pulled people out and not given them the tools, and they haven't been successful because the tools weren't provided to them. But I also think this is a great avenue for people in leadership roles, especially that mid-level leadership role. You know, we always tell them you have to have an ed leadership degree to do that, and nothing against people who've done ed leadership degrees, but that doesn't tell me that you have these skills, and these are much more appropriate for training others and working with others. I would like for us to move away from everybody running to get ed leadership because they think they have to have it, and having these kind of interpersonal teaching skills. I think it's much more appropriate.
Well, and actually, you just touched on a point that I feel bad that I missed, because it was one of the original reasons why I proposed this, was just that. How do we provide advancement opportunities so that there's increased earning potential? They also, not beyond even the earning potential, how do I increase my sense of personal value, my sense of who I am as an individual, if I can't create opportunities for me to coach and help lead and mentor others? So that was the secondary opportunities that we saw here. So thank you for highlighting that as well. I'm sorry I forgot. Ms. Fortney.
Who pays for this?
We would pay for this. So it would be just like we do currently with the University of South Florida model. We would take it either out of
Gotcha.
Title II funds or other funding. There are grants available, so we would offset these costs for our
And
staff.
how would we narrow that down as to who gets in these certification programs?
I would say we'd emulate the same process that we currently have in place where they apply. We would look to apply it broadly. We would look to ensure that we have participation from all school levels and all communities to the extent possible. And, you know, other programs, we're very specific in who we're targeting, but in this case, this would be more of a generic, open opportunity. I would even say to a certain extent, even a lottery approach, depending on the number of applicants we get.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Fields.
I think this is a great opportunity and can definitely attract new teachers, knowing that they're going to have the support that they need. I'm just interested to know, are there other school districts that's doing the same thing?
There are other districts that are interested in this process, as they have found out, but we would be on the front edge of this.
Thank you.
Dr. Allen.
Yeah, great. I love the idea of supporting building professional development initiatives. It shows that we value the growth of our employees, our teachers. I'm curious of like how many do we think that's going to be rolling into a cohort in the future? You're looking at 15 hours within the program. You know, your MA's 30 hours. How many of the 15 hours would then transfer into that MA program at USF? You know, does that have any impact on if they go through the 15-hour certificate? Does that cohort then have to move towards together within a cohort at USF? I'm just thinking through some of those things initially. But first of all, I guess the question, how many of our teachers would be rolling into that certificate program? Would the 15 hours actually transfer into the MA program, or is it just a certain amount of hours? And that might be a question for Ms. Williamson.
Ms. Williams, remind me, were we talking about 20 to 30 individuals in the first cohort?
The first cohort.
Okay.
I know the application process, of course, it would apply, and then based on the application process, I'm sure the board would determine how many, you'd be able to put through at that point. As GCU, we are prepared for up to 100. So I've prepared the staff, the support staff, the teaching staff up to 100. But that number would be dependent on how many of your teachers apply. In terms of what would transfer into our programs, we looked at Masters in Reading, at different level master's programs. The teachers could transfer up to 3 or 4 of these classes into some of these master's degree programs, which we'll outline to them as we're walking them through that process. So they'll know specifically what master's degrees, would get the most transferability based on these classes.
And I think one of the questions you asked, if I heard it correctly, was do they essentially have to wait for the entire cohort to be willing to move into another area of study? And the answer would be no. It would just simply be reflected on their personal transcript.
Right.
So if the opportunity presented itself and they chose to take advantage of the next available opportunity to enter into a full-time program, they would have that opportunity and these courses on their transcripts.
Right.
Cool. All right, thank you.
And to Mr. Hyde's point, all the teachers would be granted a certificate from Grand Canyon University of completion that he could potentially take to the DOE.
All right. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Next item, I'd like to bring Ms. Heather Jenkins, and I'm not sure if Mr. Pitts is joining her, but we have a budget update for 22-23.
How are you all? Today, we did receive our fourth calculation, so we wanted to update the numbers reflecting that. We have prepared another comparison, which is similar to the one I showed you previously. So as you can see, our gross state and local FEFP has gone up $654,000, and that's predominantly as a result of our weighted FTE and unweighted FTE increasing. When you look further into the calculation, you can see that our Family Empowerment Scholarship has gone up a bit, and also the adjustment to McKay. We'll get into that a little bit further. The total increase in funding is $7,158,021, which is about $6.3 million in new funding once you take off the portion for the charter schools. The family empowerment variance from the third calculation to the fourth calculation is $867,000. That includes both McKay and family empowerment. This is something that we'll continue to bring to you so that you can see the variances and the changes as they occur. And this does change the presentation that I brought to you a while back. So I've done a new comparison with the fourth calculation to the conference report. As you can see, the total amount went down a little bit to $67.3 million. That is because the fourth calculation is a bit higher than the third calculation, so it adjusts the variance between prior year and current year. The base student allocation is the same at $217 higher. The largest portion of the increase is due to the weighted FTE times the base student allocation times the district cost differential, which is about $42.8 million. That's your largest portion in the increase. We also have some changes in categoricals. The teacher salary increase allocation is $9.7 million in addition to what we had in the prior year. And we are projecting, the initial comparison does not show the Family Empowerment Scholarship. Those numbers aren't reported in the conference report. Therefore, we have to use an estimate, and we're using the estimate from our FTE estimating conference. That I've got here for you. I want you to see that from our second calculation last year in 21-22, we had budgeted $14.4 million for the family empowerment in McKay. For 22-23, we are projecting $48.8 million at current, which is a $34.3 million increase. That's included in the numbers we've already discussed. So I adjusted our discretionary funding sheet a bit to reflect these differences. Our new total funding increase is $67.3 million over 21-22. I've included the family empowerment estimate of an increase of $34.4 million, less $20 million in categoricals, which gives us about $13 million. We have our estimated expense to increase the minimum to $15, which is $14 million. Prior negotiations with both unions are listed. Our potential increase to the board contribution is $10.3 million, and FRS increases are $4.57 million. I will tell you, since the presentation was prepared, that we have gone a bit further in negotiations with both groups, and we are also continuing to review our health insurance plan. So we will have some more updated information on that for you at a later date. Do y'all have any questions?
Mr. Wilson.
So it looks like we have a negative discretionary funding.
Yes, sir.
Negative. Where's that going to come from?
This is based on new funding. This doesn't take into account the closing out of 21-22.
Okay.
So that negative will come from readjustments of our budget and also any fund balance, excess of fund balance.
Do we have a sense of what any fund balance will be at this point?
We're still working on that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Miller.
Just have a question. The word McKay, because it's all the empowerment scholarship now, this is only counting McKay into private. This is not counting the money that students are McKay within our, we used to call it McKay. I think we're gonna have to come up with another name to McKay within the district.
Yes, ma'am. That's reported separately now from the family empowerment. So if they are remaining within our district, they're counted in our FTE numbers and not reflected
In the McKay.
in that. We have shown, yes, this is just those individuals going to private, not those remaining within the district.
Should we have, I'm glad that you're explaining that, but because when you hear McKay, you're thinking all of McKay, which is money that we're keeping here because the kids are staying here.
Right.
Back when we projected that 14, I mean, people that live in the McKay empowerment world knew that it was going to be a lot more because of legislation that expanded who could take part in it. My question is, can at some time you, and you may have sent this, but updated numbers on how many students we have enrolled, how many students we have on the empowerment, because we should track that with our IEPs because we have a liaison that does that. Is there any way to get a number of that sent to us?
Yes, ma'am. I have that breakdown. I'll send it.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Fields.
Ms. Jenkins, can you expound a little bit on the potential increase for health insurance?
Yes, ma'am. So we are one of the districts that does not have an employee contribution. One of the final remaining districts. Increases in healthcare cost, claims, et cetera, have gone up as the years have gone by. So what that increase represents is an increase to board contribution. So in order to keep our health plan level, essentially we'd like to have, you're supposed to have 60 days worth of claims in reserves. But to start working towards that and keep the plan from going into the negative, the board will have to increase their contribution. So that's the number that we're continuing to review and look at so that we can tell you what that amount is. We also recently had an additional $2.4 million in ESSER claims, well, in primary COVID diagnosis claims that we're going to transfer to ESSER because they're eligible. So that will reduce that number a bit.
And I think you said we're the only school district who pays 100%.
There are a few, very few. I believe there's 2 or 3 remaining.
Correct.
And what do the others typically, is it like a percentage that the employees pay?
Some districts have tiered plans. They offer, they would offer a free plan, and then you would buy up for additional services. Some districts have, like 2 plans. It can go from gold, silver, platinum, bronze. They have different metal associated types of plans. Each one that's a little higher has more benefits associated with it. So it just, there are multiple types of structures that you can look at, and they vary across the state.
At some point in time, I know we've had discussion before, and I know that no one wants to give the employees an increase, any type of added expense, but are we going to look at some options as far as the type of plan that we might be offering, or how are we going to, we can't continue to fund at this high level without it impacting the overall health of the school district?
You're absolutely correct, and even though I've been here a short time, the reality for Polk County Public Schools is every year the board has seen a fairly significant increase in the amount that the board is having to cover due to our insurance costs rising. And so what the team has been doing, Ms. King presented previously several months ago, they are reviewing two types of strategies. Obviously, we need to go back out to the marketplace to see if there's a more competitive insurance option for us. But within there, to your point, I think Ms. Jenkins covered one, which is everybody gets a certain level of coverage, and then if I want better coverage, I can invest personally in that. I don't know that that necessarily long-term solves our problem, because even investing in that low-level base level of insurance is incredibly costly for the district. Other school districts do ask for a specified percentage of contribution. I don't know what that average is, but we can certainly research that and come back to you. But the board and the insurance committee and others are aggressively addressing this issue right now, trying to seek out options, because we know our current reality is not sustainable over time. And the board, much to your credit, has been adamant over the years to not pass on a health insurance cost when we haven't been able to address providing commensurate raises. And nobody wanted to provide a raise and ultimately end up passing along an insurance cost that actually was more than the raise was giving to the employees. So the board did, I commend the board on their policy historically on how we've approached this, but it is time for us to revisit insurance comprehensively. So the team is doing that, and I can talk to Ms. King and Ms. Jenkins and get, in my Friday update, I'll provide you with a timeline in which we will bring this topic back.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Miller?
And this is more for the superintendent. I just want to remind, and I know staff is working hard on this, but there were some ideas brought to, at that one work session, approaching even pharmaceuticals and how those are paid for. So I'm looking forward to what they discover or what they bring to us for cost savings. Because, listen, it's a competitive market, and so I'm hoping we can find something and we don't have to give up that benefit. Because right now it's a strong reason why we hold, especially paraprofessionals. They'll take the job knowing that they have health insurance, and because that's a big benefit. So I'd hate to jeopardize that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Allen?
Yeah, and just following up on this one, you know, I would love to see some data on our adjacent districts and what their cost is for healthcare per single member. And, you know, and then comparison to, say, the 10 largest districts to see, you know, because I know we mentioned there's only a few that have held steady on not passing that, that burden on. So who are the few? Be curious on that question. And then, wow, that's a dramatic increase in regards to the family empowerment. I've been pushing out and trying to gather some more details around that one. I appreciate the data that you sent to us as well. Where are we getting the projections from?
The projections come
For
from.
the 22-23 school year, yeah. Is that based on applications or?
It is. It's based on information we receive from DOE and also our own FTE tracking department. And as Ms. Miller specified, we have an individual that works with them on the IDEA side, McKay, et cetera. There's a federal piece as well. So it's several different sources of information that we put together to come up with that forecast.
Yeah. So the increase, can we see that broken down by particular categories?
Yes, sir, I have that.
Yeah, you got that? All right. And I'm just curious, like, what we're thinking initiative-wise, you know, because obviously you're presenting this as an issue and a concern, just an awareness in a sense. But, you know, what are you thinking, Superintendent Hyde?
We need to compete.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
We need to spend more time finding out from families why they're choosing alternative options.
Yeah.
And how do we then afford those similar opportunities within the district through school choice and opening up additional seats, which is, as you know, is a priority. Making sure that we have high-performing, high-interest, high-demand programs, and we're replicating them throughout the county. That part of that's going to be done through comprehensive rezoning, regionalizing academies and magnet programs. I mean, that's all part of a multi-year. It's going to take us about 2 years to comprehensively address, but that is our interest. But we do have to take the time. I think more importantly, you know, we do this with staff. We do it anytime. We do an exit interview.
Yeah.
We need to afford our families an opportunity to provide us with that information. More often than not, it's not necessarily the academics. It's not necessarily the school climate. At times, it's the unresponsiveness that they feel, or that they feel that we are not as sympathetic to their concerns. And you know, there's always two sides to a story, but the reality of it is we're very much still in the customer service industry in public education. We serve those who walk through the door each and every day. And so I think we do need to spend more time focusing on that customer service aspect and getting real explicit information and feedback as to why they're choosing other options. And within those options, which ones can we replicate? I think at times we feel like we're hamstrung, that we have to continue to emulate and replicate existing systems and existing programs, and that's not the case. In public education anymore, we have plenty of options to explore, and I've seen other districts in Florida do it. District-managed charter schools and other options exist for us. Miami-Dade's been very successful at competing for students, and I think we need to take a page out of their book and figure out, again, what's the demand, what's the issue, how do we address it, and then how do we maximize the opportunities for families to bring them back into Polk County Public Schools.
All right, let's do it.
Ms. Fortney.
I just want to follow up on Dr. Allen. I think that's the very first question I ask you in our one-on-one. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Miller.
Someone who uses the empowerment scholarship, I can tell you that the majority of these people that are leaving that need support services, it's linked all the way back to what Mr. Wilson reminds us. IGA has never been funded. And so when the dollars follow the student, the admin costs, the building costs don't have to be taken from it. So I can take $22,000 and have my son in therapy every day. I don't know that we'll be able to replicate that. But if we can replicate an environment of inclusion and support where the staff feels that way, I think you'll see us retain. And it's also the perception. We have to do a better job of telling our story. I got a phone call yesterday from a family that is very happy at one of our center schools, never thought it could be that way, waited a long time to put their child there. And I think we need to do more of that, telling the stories to the people who are choosing this. And the biggest option is a lot of, and this is something we can't control, people take their kids out of our schools because of the high stakes testing. So we have to package that and message how we administer those high stakes tests, and it's not tests first. So that's a marketing job for us, but I think it's manageable and I think we can do it. But the Empowerment Scholarship has money in it now for more students. So it's very proactive that we are estimating those changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. At this time, I'll bring Dan Talbot forward, Director for Athletics. Is that for dramatic effect that you sit all the way in the back and walk forward?
In that dark suit, he's
We need to have some walk-up music going as well.
I was told, anytime you speak to the board, you better be dressed nice. So it wasn't told directly to me, but I heard it in passing and filed it. So I do appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak to you today. I appreciate your time and all your work and effort, Superintendent. Appreciate your hard work as well as the superintendent's cabinet as well for all they do for our athletics. We had another successful year in the classroom. Every school had over a 3.0 GPA with our athletic program, so we're excited about that. Again, Winter Haven won the academic trophy again, so I'll be delivering that to the school sometime this week with the thing on it. But for every one of our student athletes to have over a 3.2 unweighted GPA, just again proves that we're the biggest and best dropout prevention for our students in our community. So we're excited to push the academics that we have, but also sportsmanship. Auburndale won the Class 5A Sportsmanship Award announced yesterday, so we're doing the right things we have to do in the classroom and on the field, and don't try to judge it too much on our success on the field, because we let our communities do that. But the reason why I'm here today is we kind of have some things going on that I wanted to inform you about, the possibilities of adding some sports to our county. Unfortunately, and this is not just in our district, it's around the statewide, but there has been a decline in female participation amongst the sports that we do offer. So we wanted to obviously add some other sports to see if we can get more people out of the hallways and onto the fields or the courts to give those opportunities to be successful. I took girls basketball because that seems to be the one that is most concerning for us at the moment. Softball this year, I think, is another sport that we have to keep an eye on with our participation levels. But here, if you can look at our participation numbers, in 16-17, we had 3,234 female student athletes in our public school system. I don't count the 19-20 and the 20-21 school year because that was during the pandemic. There was obviously some issues. People declined not to play for whatever reason, but this year we had 2,422 female participants. So we are on a decline, and that is a concern when you have that. And keep in mind the 21-22 is with 15 high schools, not 14, with the addition of Davenport. Statewide, the FHA posted some numbers. Back in 16-17, there was almost 14,000 female student athlete girls basketball players in the state nationwide. It has now dropped down to 10,561, which is a concern, which I can kind of explain here. Around 16-17, legislation got involved with high school athletics and basically said if a kid can choose to go to a certain high school for academic reasons, then they should be able to choose to go for athletic reasons. And that's where we had to come up with our controlled open enrollment and basically open up to anyone our open schools. Well, in doing that, the FHA had to make it to where the entire state of Florida is open enrollment. So prior to 16-17, when this law, we used to have middle school days where all the coaches from the high school would come over to the middle schools and we'd get up in front of them and promote all our sports programs, what we have to offer, the things we're doing, the championships, our GPAs, all these exciting things to get our middle school students. Well, that can no longer happen because technically, and the best way to describe it is Coach McGriff at Bartow, who we all know at boys basketball, cannot walk out the back side of his gym, go into Bartow Middle, and sit down and have a conversation with all the potential students at Bartow Middle about coming over and joining the basketball program at Bartow, because technically by rule, those kids can go anywhere they want. And then that would be recruiting. So the minute that happens, and then the recruiting is a whole nother situation, but the fines for recruiting are a $5,000 fine out of their salary. So they only make $2,000 to coach, we have to then deduct it out of their salary. And the first offense comes with a 6-week suspension. Second offense is another $5,000 out of their salary, which comes with a year suspension. And then the third offense, hopefully we never get to this point, will be another $5,000, and the DOE will pull their certificate if they have a teaching certificate. Usually if we have a coach that's a community coach and they have a recruiting violation, we'll usually terminate their employment immediately to avoid any future. So with the new state law that comes out, it's harder for us to go out and promote. And when you have community coaches that are coaching sports, they're not in the hallways day to day. So part of our initiative this year as an athletic program is make sure we're hiring more teacher coaches in the building, because we got to be out in the hallways recruiting the student athletes from the hallways into in the courts, into the grass. And I think if we had that, some of the sports we're looking at adding to our docket would be flag football, which is a very popular sport that has been growing. Bowling is something that we've had. We have the supplements already for bowling. It's something we never really got rid of. It was more the facilities kind of didn't want us there. And I think enough time has passed where I joined a bowling league on Friday night, so it's been very interesting. When my mother-in-law announced to people what I do for a living, I like to go places and just bowl and have a good time, and I enjoy it. So there's been a lot of inquiries about bringing bowling back, and it's very exciting. Actually, a lot of student athletes are in the bowling alleys bowling on during the week and at night. So it's interesting to see, you know, as a county athletic director, see those student athletes and not be able to offer them an opportunity. So I'd love to be able to do that. Beach volleyball is a growing sport. I started here because it was started in 21-22 by the FHSAA, and over 152 schools have joined. Beach volleyball is relatively inexpensive on the school's end because we already have the uniforms with volleyball already. There's no officials that have to officiate the game. The girls do it themselves. We'll be able to partner with Florida Southern, Weber, City of Auburndale, City of Lakeland to use their sand volleyball courts. And I won't hit Miss Usher up just yet for those facilities because we have other concerns. And then obviously boys volleyball, there's been some inquiry about starting boys volleyball. All these sports, bowling is a fall sport, and then the remaining of these sports are spring sports, which I think will be very exciting. Our neighboring counties, Hillsborough is probably the capital of girls flag football. They were featured in 2 Nike commercials during the Super Bowl, which when the Super Bowl was in Tampa, which we have benefited from because if we do add flag football, Nike will cover uniforms for every school in the district to alleviate the cost for starting flag football. So that's exciting with the Super Bowl being here and our neighboring county doing so well in flag football that we can also benefit from it. Hillsborough doesn't offer bowling, and I won't go through this, but you can see our surrounding neighbors do offer a lot of these sports. The nice thing about being in a district our size is you don't really have to worry about your competition because there's plenty enough within the county to play each other, so travel will be minimal and those sort of things. We don't have to look for, we have enough schools to play each other and satisfy the need and desire. This survey is what we sent out during the spring. Obviously, it will need to be updated. We've had some change in administration at the principal level in our high schools, the assistant principal levels, and athletic directors. So we'll offer this survey again to make sure we doesn't miss anybody. But the nice thing about adding a sport to our situation, if they don't do it this year, they will always have the opportunity to grow and maybe add it for the future. So just because we have a high school here that says no, doesn't mean that that couldn't change. And hopefully it will. We want to be able to create opportunities because as you can see, all the ones that say yes, I think Mulberry High School, when we did the survey, there was 48 kids that were interested in boys volleyball, you know, and it's big amongst, popular amongst our Hispanic and Latino communities, very exciting for them. This is the projected startup cost at each level. The girls flag football, basically $2,000. All they need is flags and footballs. Footballs have gone astronomical like everything else in the supply chain world with athletics, transportation, and officials. Beach volleyball, very minimal. Like I said, we have the uniforms. There is no officials. Bowling, transportation, we just added in state series just in case we do have some student athletes that go on. But beach volleyball and bowling will be one of those situations where the parents will have to do a lot of transporting, which if you think about it, they do anyway in the AAU world. Parents are gone every weekend taking kids to tournaments, so it'd be no different. And then boys volleyball will be just like girls volleyball and mirror girls volleyball as we do in the fall, but it'll just be in the spring with the boys. Because our gyms are pretty much empty in the spring because we don't have any indoor events in the spring, so our gyms will be available for those. Projected cost from the district as a maximum, I put $165,000, but that would change. We'd have to get with our teacher union and basically negotiate the supplements for these mirroring what we've done around other counties and being coexistent. If I had to guess, looking at the assistant, I would say the head coach for girls flag football would probably be around $1,800 and the assistant would be $1,400, would probably be a safe bet, averaging in what other counties do as far as their supplements. And then that would be the projection. Surrounding counties, ticket sales, flag football about $6,500 per school. So the schools won't be requesting any additional funding from the budgets we already provide them. Basically, we should be able to operate these sports alone. The main source of funding would be for the supplements in the district. As anything adding, there is concern, potential wear on the football game fields. Obviously, in the spring, the fields take a time to heal. But girls flag football won't tear it up as nearly as much as lacrosse and soccer do in the spring. One of those concern is the sharing of athletes in the spring. Softball coaches have some concern that they'll lose players off the softball, because we never want to add a sport and pull from another sport. But I think you can be creative with your track and field athletes and your girls flag football athletes in making sure that they play. The girls flag football have games during the week because the track meets are on the weekends, and make sure you have the right coaches in the right place that want to make it happen and give that kid an opportunity to do both. That's the kind of coaches we want in our system, is not the ones that say you play one sport. We want these kids to grow and experience everything while they can and benefits. And obviously, the availabilities of bowling alleys, but before we move forward, I'll have a commitment from the bowling alleys that, you know, these schools will go to the AMC South, these schools on the north side will go to Orange Bowl lanes, the schools on the east side will do Cypress lanes, and then the Lake Wells area, like with McLaughlin, the Kegel Center, which is a Pro Bowlers Association League training center. And obviously the benefits increase scholarship opportunities for the PCPS athletes, and then obviously increase equity for our female student athletes in the county. And equity is always a concern, especially when female athletes on the climb. This year, as you'll see in July with our Title IX numbers, we're looking to add competitive cheer for the first time. We've never had to do that. The DOE does not recognize competitive cheer. It always comes with an appeal. But Hillsborough County, Dade, Broward, the big counties have always appealed for competitive cheer because it does meet the criteria of there is a clear winner, there are scholarships opportunity. So it meets all the criteria of counting for Title IX. We just have to appeal. But I got with our diversity and equity department, they have the actual letter that they need to submit that every county, because we all have used the same one, to submit to the DOE and work together to do those things. But again, thank you for your time. And
Ms. Miller?
I just have a question. When we removed middle school sports, it kind of removed that, a lot of the middle school sports, it kind of removed that, that opportunity to grow them into the high school. And since I didn't realize how strict the rules were having coaches go back to the middle schools, could we use another marketing strategy? Like I'm thinking, I know of one young lady who played softball, since that's a number that's dwindling, who went, I think she out of Lake Region, but went to Auburn and now works professionally in softball. Like, could we bring like people back that we've had be successful in these roles to the middle schools? Like, how can we get middle schools excited if we can't use the coaches to get them excited?
yeah, absolutely. We can definitely, 'cause I can't remember her name, but I know who you're talking about, because I think she went somewhere else. Arkansas, that's it. You married, yes. We can bring her back. She just can't direct them towards Bartow or Lake Region, but she could.
She can get excited about the
We can work with our
sport.
middle schools, because we are a big concentration on middle school, because we do have supplements for our middle school sports this year for the first time in the history. So that is going to generate more interest, and more coaches are going to be available to coach those kids. And like you said, it's a great idea to bring in former athletes that have gone on, and you know, Tracy McGrady and all those, to talk about the importance of athletics. And I don't necessarily sit here as my role as the district athletic director, but it's all extracurricular activities. It's being involved in something, no matter what it is, the benefits that it can pay off, and the great things that can come from it. But yeah.
What about the only one that I was involved in when it first got here, just getting people to the event center, is the ice hockey that we've grown. Other than limited, because it's only one rink in the entire county, are we seeing that opportunity grow for kids? Or is it still, we're sharing team members from all over the county?
We're still sharing team members, because
Okay.
it's really hard to grow that. I play there on Sunday evenings. Actually, I had a doubleheader this Sunday evening, and it was
I love that you're still on the ice.
it was grueling. 2 games in a.
Are you gonna give us your game schedule?
I can definitely share that with you. I can. I play Saturday nights in Tampa and Sunday nights in Lakeland, because I do enjoy it, and it helps me put things in perspective. But it's also hard when someone does something illegal to you and you want to react, and then you think about what your job is, and it probably wouldn't be good to end up on social media and then get a call from Superintendent Hyde.
We're here for the kids.
We're here for the kids. I'm not playing against, well, actually, I was playing against some of these kids, and I'm too old to chase those little young ones around. But it's always about promoting and marketing and trying to get it, because I don't think a lot of people know, like there's a doctor in Winter Haven that where I skate at his house. He has a synthetic rink in his
Right.
backyard, who his son was a student athlete at Winter Haven. He has a fake ice in his barn in his backyard. where we skate. We used to skate, but now we have the rink in Lakeland.
You have the rink, and I know the Tampa Bay Lightning was very involved in wanting to get kids involved. So I don't know how
Yes.
much they're still involved.
They still are. They're still
Okay.
at the middle school level, not the high school, even though they
Okay.
sponsor the league. But with all our middle schools, every middle school and elementary school has floor hockey given to us by the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is exciting, obviously in their Stanley Cup. So.
Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt, and then Ms. Fortney.
So for the schools that said that they wanted or did not want sports this year, I'm assuming that survey was probably done before any administration changes at schools. Will we give the new principals that have come on an opportunity to reevaluate that list for this school
Absolutely.
year, or do they, okay.
Well, and necessarily, it's not really, just principals, but it could be.
Athletic
It could be
directors,
an
yeah.
athletic director change or an assistant principal change, someone, obviously there was changes, there's some there with new energy, new blood, new excitement, and we want to give every school the opportunity that if this does come to fruition, that, now's the time to choose and add and give an opportunity. Just because they said no in the spring, it doesn't mean it's no for good.
Well, I think with all due respect, we need to follow up with the why. If the no's the answer, we need to
Right.
understand the context of why. Is it that they feel that they're spread too thin with supervision? Then how do we best address that? Because we don't want that to serve as a barrier to students getting access to a program. Is it proximity to facilities? I mean, much to Ms. Miller's credit, while ice hockey may be a flourishing interest because of the Tampa Bay Lightning, the reality of it is there aren't enough ice rinks and there isn't enough ice time, which more often than not forces children and families to make very difficult decisions of having to get ice time literally at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. before the school day. In addition to which, it is one of the most costly sports for students to participate in, and it is a club, so it's not a sponsored activity. So it's very different right now for ice hockey to grow, even with its interest, because there's just not enough facilities to help support that. Roller hockey and other options, as Mr. Talbot pointed out, might be better. But I think getting back to, I really would like to know the root cause of the why somebody said no to a particular sport. Boys volleyball is one that's growing momentum. Students' interests are shifting, and quite frankly, football up north in the Midwest, football is rapidly declining. More students are gravitating towards lacrosse and other sports because of the high concussion incidences. You're seeing fewer students go out for those sports. So I think it's just a matter of the ebb and flow of what traditionally happens with athletics and extracurriculars. A lot of schools has tried to get creative, going on seven-on-seven football teams, and another option is just to be able to field a team. So I think we're seeing some of that, but I'd like to hear, like I said, more specifically, what's the barrier to a school? What caused them to say no? And if it's a barrier we can eliminate, then we should, because this is about how do we best support our students and their interests. So, Ms. Fortney, and I'll come back to Ms. Miller.
Ms. Miller, there was a young softball player also that went to Jewett, Rivera.
Alyssa Rivera,
Yeah.
that's who I was referring to.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure. She did go to Auburn.
She went to Auburn and now works professionally in softballs. And I'm sure there's lots of those students all over in different sports. And even the summer programs, sorry, Ms. Fortney, but like if,
No, you're
like I go and hire Lake Gibson tennis student to train my daughter, but like more of the, if we could, not even hire, but like if we could just, that mentoring process to get students already playing the sport. I think the kids, they'll get excited about Tracy McGrady, of course, but I think they would get excited too, just to have older kids coming over to tell them, even elementary schools, like what you can start, what you can try. I do agree about the ice time with the ice rink. I'll tell you that I never knew that existed. We had parents getting up at 4 a.m. to go to Brandon so their kids could skate to come back. So to provide them that opportunity is great. And we have a lot of kids who've never seen an ice rink. So I think we need to take that opportunity just to show, we have a lot of kids who've never held a tennis racket. So like to create those opportunities and get the kids excited is going to take administration saying it's a great idea. So I really appreciate going back and saying, is there a barrier here? I mean, why is there a no?
Well, and one thing we're working on too is now that physical education falls under my direction, we do have a Learn to Swim program,
Right.
which we brought back, after the COVID. But talking to the owner of the rink, Paul, we do want to look at the possibilities of a Learn to Skate program within our district and model it just after our swim program where we bust the kids over, we teach them how to ice skate, put on the helmets, obviously, but also, create a Learn to Skate, just to create more opportunities because you just never know.
Right.
So I'm going to come back to Ms. Fortney, then Ms. Wyatt, then Dr. Allen.
Quite frankly, this was my concern back in the early 90s when we went from the junior high model to the middle school model. Because when I taught your wife, we had real football teams in junior high. We had real marching band. We had real basketball, even though at Denison, where I was, we practiced on real asphalt because there was no gym.
Those walls are
Yeah, it's only taken this many gray hair. But no, the bottom line is facilities, I worried about girls' basketball because the community really didn't have that in place to help them acclimate to not having a team at school, right? There was no organized girls' basketball. And now, AAU, as you said,
My question kind of goes off of Ms. Fortney's as far as middle school sports. I know you know how passionate we all are about middle school sports, but do any of these, will they have the opportunity to have some middle school bowling teams, or not necessarily this year, but
No, we
looking
we
ahead?
do want to look to grow our middle school sports offerings. Really with flag football would come down to risk management, but would love to have a filter, whether it's, because we don't have middle school football yet. You'll see me soon.
Yet, a good word.
But, yeah, I think so. We want to have a natural pipeline into what we do at the high school level.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Allen, then Ms. Fields.
Yep, I didn't know that you were the kingpin, so I know Steve Cochran was trying to get together a team for Junior Achievement Bowl-a-thon, which happens tomorrow night, so I might have to reach out to you.
Please do.
Okay.
I
But
got my own shoes and everything. It's pretty exciting.
man, I can't wait to see that. Okay, so I appreciate seeing the boys volleyball on there. A lot of requests coming in on that one. So you've got it separate, beach volleyball and boys volleyball. So is the boys volleyball, is that indoor?
Indoor in the
Boys.
gym, modeled just after
Okay.
girls volleyball, which takes
Perfect.
place in the fall.
Awesome. And then the beach volleyball, is that including men or is that only?
That's only female.
Okay, good. All right, cool. Good to know. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Fields?
I would just add what you said about the why, because I think that's very critical, and there are different reasons why. A lot of it has to do with leadership of the sports and relationships and stuff. And so when you go back and do the survey again, it would be nice to have a piece there as to why
Okay.
they choose not to participate.
We can definitely do that. Because
Thank
with
you.
these sports, bowling is the only one that competes in the fall. So when we get back into school in August, I can get another survey and update you and get you the actual live minutes with the new ninth graders and new administrations and everything, and then have a why in the fall.
Thank you. I
Yes, ma'am.
appreciate it.
See no further questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Project Search. Good morning, afternoon, excuse me. Ooh, that was
Good
not me.
afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacinth Lawrence. I'm the Director of Programs with the Center for Independent Living, and I'm here to talk about a program that's near and dear to my heart. We are in partnership with Polk County Public Schools, and through your actual leadership, some 6 years ago, we started a program with Polk County Public Schools called Project Search. So before I go into all the details of the programming, I just want to share a little background about who the Center for Independent Living is, what we do, and why this whole thing happened. No worries. So while that's being set up, I'm going to talk about Center for Independent Living. We are a non-residential, non-for-profit organization supporting people with disabilities, across all ages. We provide a number of programs, and one of them is our youth transition program called Step Ahead, where we support young people as they grow from, those high school years into adult roles. One of the programs that we have worked with in the community is called Project Search. Project Search began at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and it began as a way to support young people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to enter the workforce in a way that is more meaningful and supportive of their learning. And so Project Search began all those years ago with basically a teacher and a nurse wanting to find opportunities for these kids to learn marketable, transferable job skills. The Project Search has been replicated internationally. We're in 4 countries and over 38 states, and it's constantly growing, so this data might change tomorrow. Because the program is designed around data, it's designed around best practices, and it's designed to support that individual not just when they're in school, but after school. And so the Project Search program here is a partnership between a business organization, preferably a large enough organization that can support multiple types of jobs within one setting, a vocational rehabilitation entity like our state vocational rehab, and a non-for-profit like the Center for Independent Living. And so in your iteration of Project Search, we are actually located at Lakeland Regional Health. And our site is designed around the school system, the community systems, and around the idea that youth with exceptionalities are more successful when they transition out of high school if they have the opportunity for full workplace immersion, not a classroom artificial setting, but a real world setting. That these individuals have the opportunity for strong connections to caring adults, mentorship, both civic, social, and leadership opportunities. That the skills development happens in an integrated setting where they're working with people who have and don't have disabilities or exceptionalities. And that these conditions provide an opportunity for a meaningful connection to the community, so we don't have that drop off as soon as we leave the comfort of high school, that there is that support built into the community where they can transition and continue to receive services. So having understood that work-based evidence, evidence-based support for transition is tied into Project Search. The goal of Project Search is competitive employment. It is not sheltered workshops or subsidized earning. It is competitive earning. Whatever position the student or intern will have achieved after the program will be the same as you and I and our children who don't have exceptionalities. They will be paid the same way. They'll be expected to perform the job, if not at the exact same level, but to the standard of that entry-level position or full-time position, part-time, whatever. The program currently takes place at Lakeland Regional Health. It is funded through our relationship with vocational rehabilitation. Center for Independent Living provides a job coach / job developer, and your district, through your foresight and planning, provides a teacher. In this iteration of Project Search, you also have a coach on site. So 2 staff people from you and 1 staff person from us. Then they're also connected to vocational rehabilitation, which helps them to plan for post-secondary life and continued employment support after they've graduated from high school. So these are our partners: Lakeland Regional Health, Polk County Public School. The DD Council was instrumental in starting this program, Center for Independent Living, and Vocational Rehabilitation. These entities together are what supports Project Search. What is the impact of the program? Again, this is a work program. It is intended for individuals who are right at the end of their life in high school. They have met their academic requirements, they have deferred, and have decided to participate in this program. The impact to the community is obviously that Project Search addresses workforce diversity needs at Lakeland Regional Health, especially in essential areas. And this was proven true time and time again during the pandemic. Our interns actually filled quite a few positions at that hospital. The hospital is invested in hiring people that they have trained. Because they've met the interns, there isn't a perception of disability that they might not have intimate knowledge of. They're now seeing our young people. They understand our young people. And so those vague ideas of what a disability looks like, feels like in a work setting are gone because of the impact of the program. So coworkers now can see that when somebody says they have a developmental disability, it doesn't mean I can't work. It doesn't mean I can't think. It doesn't mean I can't be productive. It may mean that I may need interesting and unique ways of learning a job task, but I'm capable. And because of that, they are committed to hiring our interns because they've seen the value of their work. This program in particular averages 89% placement rate for participants. We have won year after year the Project Search International centers that have achieved this employment rate. Taking into consideration that the national average for Project Search job placement is 70 to 75%, we're doing a great job. The program is designed to support the most significantly disabled students. This is not a program for an individual who could graduate high school and maybe with the help of a job coach find a job and be done with training in a week. We're looking at kids who need time, who need effort, who need unique teaching skills, who would learn best from not just their peers and their teachers in a kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, unnatural environment like a classroom, but in an integrated setting where things that you might be teaching in a classroom don't translate the same way in a real world setting. So when a teacher talks about communication skills and what not to talk about at lunch and at work, your kid is gonna learn that much better from their peers who's gonna nudge them and say, no, we don't talk about personal relationships at work. This is what this looks like. Modeling professional behaviors from their peers, modeling professional behaviors from the coaches that are in that environment, from the managers around them. They are learning from the people they're gonna have to work with every day in the real world. And so we have seen significant growth in those students in learning these soft skills that are most challenging for this kind of student being improved because they're in a setting that allows them the time to do that. Remember that Project Search provides a 1-year, 9-month internship program. Throughout that program, your intern is learning 3 different complex jobs in a very complicated work setting. This is not McDonald's, even though McDonald's can be very challenging for some. It is not easy when you're learning, but in a setting where there are so many opportunities for you to learn jobs that provide skills that are transferable to just about every industry is the goal of Project Search. And that's why you'll see a number of sites are in hospitals. But they are by no means the only options. They are really primarily chosen because they have that variety of options for students to learn jobs in a real world setting. So we're very excited about the fact that Project Search can have this impact on those students with the most significant needs for learning and learning consistently over a long period of time so that learning is reinforced, is coming from their peers and not so much in an artificial setting like a classroom. I want to talk to you guys about Mason. Mason is one of your students that graduated our 2019-2020 school year. He falls in that category of students that is considered supported employment by vocational rehabilitation, which is the level that it requires the most impactful teaching and coaching and support skills. And he came to Project Search, an immature young man who needed to learn a number of soft skills in order to be functional in the society. He also had a great desire to work. And so he is now graduate. He works at Publix. He is won Employee of the Month a couple times in a row. He has provided exemplary customer service. He's been recognized for his customer service. This is where he wanted to be. However, Mason did have the potential to work anywhere else. He did 3 rotations in multiple settings where he could have been in shipping and receiving. He could have been in food and nutrition. He could have done a number of customer service type jobs. He chose to work at Publix, and he was able to transfer all those skills, and he's an exemplary employee. Because of Project Search, Mason will never have to depend on Social Security benefits. Mason is earning the prevailing wage of about $12 an hour going, and he's getting his annual increases. He's gotten his recognition. He has his self-worth and self-esteem well organized, ready to go. He's excited about going to work every day, and he's an example to his peers. Because of these skills, Mason will be able to work at Publix, and maybe later on, as his ambitions change, he will have the skills to transfer to different jobs. Because he has that relationship with vocational rehabilitation and the Center for Independent Living, Mason can call me 20 years from now and say, if I'm still around, I'd like another job. 2 years from now, I'd like to try something else, because he has those community partnerships established while in Project Search. Mason may not have to depend on Social Security benefits. Right now, the federal rate is $841 per month. I don't know anyone in this room who could live on $841 a month. Because Mason is working full-time and doing well, he will never have to depend on those benefits. We're saving some $10,000 as taxpayers just because Mason is working. It offers Mason the opportunity to have health benefits and all the services that he will need as he gets on. Now we'll talk about Keyshawn. Keyshawn is another young man who I like to use as an example because his experience is coming from the experience of his peers. His cousin was one of the first Project Search interns, and he has passed on that work ethic to his younger cousin as well. So we have 3 cousins that have gone through the program. And so I like to talk about Keyshawn. Again, people think of disabilities in different ways. Keyshawn has a significant need. He does not appear to have one, but he does. And he needed a lot of coaching and training to master his job. Keyshawn is now in the shipping and receiving engineering department at Lakeland Regional Health. He had several internships. He is working full-time with full hospital benefits, and he's currently a mentor training this year's current interns that have just graduated. He's been there, he started in our 2018-2019 group, and he's been there since then. He's had 2 increases already. This is not a young man who's going to depend on others to support his daily needs. He may still need his family to support him, but he's able to earn his way, and he's going to be a success. And whatever else he has in life, he will always have the support of the community partners that he built while in Project Search. The program has the potential to serve 12 students per year. At an 89% above placement rate for the last 5 years, we know they can get meaningful, employable jobs. The actual number of students served over the last 6 years is actually 43, which includes all those that have started the program and have left the program for some reason or other. The 38 that are indicated here have completed the entire program and were placed in jobs. We had the potential to serve 72. This program can serve 12 students, remembering that these are students that need intensive support, which is why the number is 12. But we're serving between 8 and 10 annually. And so we really want to increase those numbers so that more students can get the benefits that Keyshawn and Mason have experienced. How can you help? One of the reasons I'm here today is to bring attention to something that you had the foresight to approve those 6 years ago. You recognize that there needed to be more opportunities for youth in transition to learn marketable, employable job skills. And so you embrace the Project Search program. We want you to continue to support the incredible transition programs in Polk County Public Schools like Project Search. Project Search has the potential to be replicated. It has the potential to serve more. You have a community that have a number of large-scale employers who could support young people with disabilities in their work sites. And these programs have the effect, long-term, of completely changing how people in our public and in our community think about disability inclusion. We want you to get the words out to those schools, LEAs, parents, and community partners that you have, that as early as age 14, young people with exceptionalities need to start thinking about life after high school. And this means if all your teams are involved in transition, that parents are hearing the message and that they know what you have to offer, including Project Search, and spend more time talking with teachers and LEAs and other community partners and transition team in Polk County about transition as early as 14. The Center for Independent Living is able to support parents and students in transition planning, so as soon as possible, they can be referred to our center to have case management services so that they begin to understand what transition looks like and plan for life after high school. All Polk County students with disabilities ages 14 to 22 who have an IEP or 504 plan and are considered supported employment or in need of more intensive job coaching are eligible for Project Search. The things that may determine whether they participate in the program are VR eligibility. They do have to go through that process, and that they have a developmental or intellectual disability and are able to function in a work environment, meaning they can follow directions and they have the behaviors that would be appropriate in a work setting. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be ready. They need to be willing to work and open to learning. Please support our goal of increasing the number of student participants to 12 in this particular project search site. As a Center for Independent Living representative here, I can tell you that we are committed to replicating this program as often as possible throughout the county. Our responsibility as in this partnership is the financial manager for the program licensing. It comes with a pre-made curriculum that is constantly being updated. It comes with a model that is replicated over and over again successfully. You know that our particular site has been exceptional in placing individuals with services, and that has been a team effort. I will not take any and all the credit. That has been a team effort. The teachers, the coaches have worked together along with the business partner to make sure all our students are placed. So there is definitely a lot of opportunity here that we can take advantage of. And so as an agency, I wanted to bring that to your attention, share with you what you have accomplished since initiating this program and where the opportunities are for you to continue to grow and support it. If you have any questions, now is a good time to ask.
Ms. Fortney and then Ms. Miller.
Can you explain the partnership between our transition programs and your program?
So the Center for Independent Living has an equal partnership with Polk County Public Schools, meaning your school has determined that you will provide a staff, teacher, and a coach, as well as students to participate in the program. My organization covers the cost of the licensing and the curriculum and all those things that go with the Project Search model. We also provide a staff person who is a job coach on site as well to help support that training. And then our third partner would be our business liaison, which would be the hospital.
I'm
So
curious
these are
about our
unpaid, partnership.
For example, our district transition class down there. How does that actually work with them?
Project Search.
Right.
So
with our kids that are there.
You can talk with your transition team for more detail, but what we're hoping is that as students go through that transition continuum of beginning to get exposed to job skills, and they're at that point where they've deferred graduation and want to work, the district would refer those students to the Project Search program, and then they would come to partner with us after accepting and applying for the program. It does, as I said, it simply requires a student that wants to work, that has an intellectual disability, that qualifies under vocational rehabilitation and supported employment, and there it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Miller.
Hi, Jacinth. We've known each other a long time. As somebody who sits on the Florida Developmental Disability Council, this is a very big initiative, and it's very successful around the state and other districts, multiple sites. Going way back with us, and even when John Small was here, we talked about partnering with Hilton. I myself have had conversations in the past with Legoland and Polk State College and Hilton themselves, willing to do this. So my expectation of the superintendent, and we've had many discussions about transition, is we will replicate this. Whatever barriers there have been, this opportunity needs to happen because there's a couple of things that we didn't mention. Transportation is an issue. Your parents or you have to take public transportation or get private transportation to Lakeland Regional. It serves 8 kids out of this entire county. And I know Center for Independent Living's been willing, and we've had conversations with Winter Haven Hospital that didn't, that kind of fell apart. We've had conversation with Lake Wells Hospital that kind of fell apart. My expectation, and I'm getting out of my lane, I'm not even gonna look at them. My expectation is we're not gonna have barriers for that any longer, and we're gonna seek to provide those opportunities, so providing equitable opportunities across the district. And the person at Legoland is not there anymore, but I know having those resources, Geico, there's all kinds of places that have multiple job opportunities that I think would be open to these projects. But transportation is an issue because we don't provide it. And parents understanding, when you tell a parent you're no longer going to receive benefits, as a parent who knows what that check looks like, I'm not concerned about the $800. I'm concerned about health insurance. So I think, and it's something our transition team has worked on, and they probably can develop further, is providing training. The reason we see low involvement in transition, I think, is kind of like the sports thing. They're not sure it's there. They don't know how to do it. But we've got to do some education with the parents that gainful employment with health insurance is going to help your individual live independently better than the Social Security system, which provides people living in poverty. So I think that's something that we need to look at too. And I know that Center for Independent Living creates materials for that we can help educate. Transportation is an issue, and I know that's been hard for the teacher working we have a great teacher at the hospital, and that staff, I've toured it multiple times. I've met that young gentleman that works, the brother that works there. And I think we just need to be more equitable across the district with these opportunities. And I appreciate the conversation we've had most recently with, this is for the students who need significant supports. Even the students who, if they bring their own, let's say you have a child who is significantly impaired, even language impaired, are they eligible to bring their own support staff to these programs, or it depends who's hosting the program?
So the joy of Project Search is you make it your program.
Okay.
So there are programs that have multiple opportunities. We've had nonverbal individuals with their aids
Okay.
and with their devices coming to programs. Physical limitations can be accommodated. This is why it exists, because this is the only program that you can actually build around a child. Once you have an employer that's willing to have a student there, then it's up to us as the community partner to the school to think about what accommodations they need and prepare them for that. Because at the end of the day, if a child wants to work, it's our job to figure out how it can happen. And that's my perspective, and this is a philosophy of the Center for Independent Living. So we can have students with multiple challenges, even medical and behavioral, if there's a plan in place to support them that will not be a detriment or impact on the business. Obviously, because they're a partner, they have a right to kind of say,
Right.
I can't quite work on this, but our job is to figure out what that accommodation is. So I like to say we don't disqualify students. We think about where they best fit, and can we make the accommodations that are needed? And usually we can.
And I've seen some really great, Duval County has some really great centers with North Florida School for students with disabilities. So I'm excited to see what we can do for all students. But it's going to be an education process to let students know this is available to them, and to educate the parents that it's okay to let go of that Social Security. If you really want your child to live independently, they can be gainfully employed with health insurance, and that is an education process.
It is, and the advantage of the partnership with vocational rehabilitation is that they do have a program called WIPA that provides individualized counseling for families on that financial situation, so that they can best understand how Social Security benefits work, because there are options to keep some of those benefits for those students who might not have the capacity to do a full-time job. There are techniques and there are incentives and subsidies that can be used. It's about education, as you said, and we're happy to support that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job. So it was my pleasure. I'll wait for Ms. Amato to come forward. We'll do one more. Madam Chair, I'm estimating that we'll probably conclude around 2 p.m. With this topic, and I'd ask for a 10-minute break recess at that time. So we'll have a 10-minute recess immediately following Ms. Amato. But I had the opportunity and pleasure to meet with the Project Search staff some time ago. I would say about 2 months ago. Was very impressed by the program. And it was interesting that if I seem to recall that part of the conversation revolving around transportation was that we were not to provide transportation assistance because that was an expectation of a real life skill that they would have to basically adapt to using public transportation or other means. But that might be something we have to look to after the fact. And I love the idea of expanding it, so you have been very adamant in that that's an expectation moving forward, because we don't adequately serve that population of students. You're absolutely right. But I would also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that there are opportunities within the school district that we need to also seize upon for these students in particular, in multiple trades, whether it's custodial services, whether it's food service, whether it's transportation or warehousing. I mean, we have this very similar or same opportunities within the district as arguably one of the largest employers in the county. I think we miss an opportunity here with our own students. But, and I know you and I have had conversations about making sure that if we did something as a district, it must be meaningful and relevant to the student, and not just simply someplace where we put them out in the outside, doing yard work and things of that nature. So you have my commitment there and that of staff. So it was a pleasure to have them join us today and give a summary.
And I don't want Rob Davis to get nervous. I wasn't suggesting we provide transportation. I was suggesting we make those opportunities around the county.
Absolutely.
So if I wanted to work in Winter Haven, my only it wouldn't be my only opportunity to get a job is in North Lakeland. I would have more opportunities.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely. Ms. Amato?
Good afternoon. So before you today, we have Achievement Academy's contract renewal. As you recall, back in the fall, early January, I don't remember when it was, we brought back the charter review team's recommendation, which was to renew their contract for 15 years. So their new contract would begin July 1, 22, and would end on June 30th, 2037, pending any additional renewal. As you are familiar, it is a template contract that the state provides, so we basically just kind of fill in the blank. We do have some negotiation, we do have some wiggle room for negotiating. For example, something you will find in this contract that you will not find in any of our other contracts is that we do pay, the district does pay for the reevaluation of the ESE students at Achievement Academy, mainly because of their age, and those students transition back to the district anyways, so we would be fitting the bill, so at least their information is up to date and current when they do transition to the district. That is the one unique thing about their contract that you won't find in any of the others. Other than that, it's a pretty simple, straightforward contract.
Ms. Miller?
And I mean, I think you find utmost support for Achievement Academy from this board. It's one of the first, I think, 96. It was one of the first. It was the Apple School that started as our first charter locally. And I think the new legislation that is allowing those labels to carry on, it will benefit us to be at the table when those IEPs are created to come to public school. I appreciate what they do. I wish we could replicate them, and I think we have a great relationship with them. So I don't know that you would have objection to this from anyone.
And just as a friendly reminder, this will be coming to the board tonight for a vote.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, outstanding job, Ms. Amato. At this time, we will recess for approximately 10 minutes. We'll come back at 2:10.
And we are back. Superintendent Hyde, I will turn it back over to you.
Yes, ma'am. At this time, I'd like to bring Carrie Barkin to the front, Senior Coordinator for Head Start. The item before you today is Head Start and the cost of living adjustment and quarter 1 funds increase. We have benefited recently from an increase in federal funding. As required, there's an application process and a timeline that has to be adhered to. And I put a few notes within the PowerPoint slides there, but I'll turn it over to our ladies.
Good afternoon.
So I'm Dr. Lori Allen. I'm the current director of preschool programs in MTSS. We shared last week with our board policy council and with Kay Fields about our opportunity to apply for the COLA. And so we just are asking for approval to apply for the COLA and the QI money. And if you look at what we have attached, you can see the layout here. The cost of living adjustment for $193,327, and QI is $49,025. You have any questions?
It's always a good thing when people are asking permission to get extra money.
I know.
Okay.
Listen,
So do you mind at least just providing a generic summary? We have a lot of
Sure.
questions that come in, and I'm going to seize this opportunity, quite frankly, about VPK. And you in particular and myself have received a lot of emails.
Yes.
And some of your staff about VPK, and we've received emails from staff or families that are frustrated when they're told, well, some of our programs are limited or restricted to certain students' demographics. And I think what people most oftentimes forget is that there are multiple programs under VPK. So if you wouldn't mind, take the opportunity briefly just to kind of summarize that so that we can get that out and remind everybody.
Let me ask you this question. Do you want us to explain the difference between the COLA and the QI, or is that a given, and just go right
I
into
think
the
you're
explanation?
fine on the COLA and the QI unless
Okay.
the board has specific questions to that, but I would just ask you to generically summarize the different types of VPK programs we have and who they serve.
Okay, you want to start with Head Start?
Okay. Under preschool programs, I oversee the Head Start grant, which is the direct federal grant, and we serve 942 children on 23 campuses, elementary campuses. And the Head Start program has 4 eligibility ways to get into Head Start, in other words, which income, homeless, foster care, or on public assistance. So you have to meet one of those 4 as your criteria in. And then our policy council approves a selection criteria to sort the children based on the highest need. So the goal of the Head Start program is to serve the neediest of the needy children coming in. And that program serves 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds.
We also have just been approved to use SNAP as an eligibility criteria. So if a family qualifies for SNAP, that's an automatic. So that's been a really big blessing for us because students who did not qualify previously now can. So the other program is Title I, which is also federal funded program. It's Title I Part A is different than what our schools are funded. And it is also specifically targeting our most needy. So the qualification for that is that the student has to be 4 years old, and they must be zoned for the school campus that the classroom is on. So if we have a Title I classroom on Elbert, then the students that attend there must be zoned for that school. The goal is that we're reaching the kids that are the most needy in that community. We're trying to serve our kids who may not be able to afford a private daycare or outside besides or have transportation outside of another area. So the big change that we made this year is that we do not give preference to other employees or people who want to go to that school that are not zoned for that area, because especially when it comes to employee, that we don't want them to have the opportunity to know ahead of time or before time and have the opportunity to enroll within a day when other parents may not be able to get there in time of the enrollment. So that's the biggest complaint that we've had. Part of that is that we have many schools or private daycares, private preschools that are closing down based on the $15 an hour requirement now. They can't afford to keep their doors open. So we have quite a few that have closed down, which have caused an even bigger considerable need. The third is straight VPK, which is state-funded money. It will take us 11 full-day children to just afford a CDAT, which is para pay, not a certified teacher pay. So if we do not have a full classroom, it's just not funded. Now, they did pay a little bit more this year. We do have a little more money coming in because of the $15 an hour requirement, but that did not help many of our private care. We have 21 Title I and 22 VPK classrooms currently. The VPK offers either a half day for free, so they can go in the morning for 3 hours or the afternoon for 3 hours, or they can go a full day, which means they get the first 3 hours for free and then they pay a stipend for the second half of the day. We've attempted to put VPK classrooms on our schools that are magnet or magnet or schools of choice, or our higher income neighborhoods like the South Lakeland schools.
Our biggest issue right now that we face with VPK as we continue to look, and I'm impressed by our team because they are committed to the same thing, that in our next iteration of strategic plan, VPK expansion is a priority for us. As was shared, a lot of the private providers over the last 6 months have started to shut, I shouldn't say a lot, but a significant number of private providers have started to shutter their doors because they could not afford the salary increase. I'm very proud of the fact that the Early Learning Coalition, which we sit on that board, recently approved an increase in the compensation and reimbursement for them so that they could be more competitive and we could have additional providers. As we look at rezoning, and we've talked about underutilized campuses, we've looked at those things, while growth on the outskirts of our school district, as I've lovingly said, we were growing love handles in Polk County, we're going to find that we have fewer spaces because VPK oftentimes is pushed out of buildings because of the growth within the zoned community itself of students who should attend that campus. So, for example, schools that VPK at DSA and other types of schools may not last forever. And that's the nature of VPK programming. Unfortunately, more often than not, it's moved because of a lack of available space, or it moves because the student location shifts. So while a VPK program may have been centrally located for that cadre of students, a subsequent cadre of students may be 10 miles down the road, and they have shifted. The same reason we move bus stops from time to time based off where students reside, not basically forcing kids to walk 3 miles to a bus stop. So it's important to note that those are issues, but we are, and as I said, I'm impressed by the team because they're committed to expanding our VPK presence, and we'll be bringing some suggestions to you in the near future, potentially VPK center schools, potentially satellite campuses, as we look to maximize our facilities. But right now, that continues to be a work in progress. But I did want to get an opportunity to put it out there about the changes in VPK, about our different VPK programs, because there's a lot of cognitive confusion out there. A lot of people assume that VPK is just a traditional preschool environment. And you know, fortunately for us and fortunately for our community, we serve a lot of disparate needs through VPK. And a lot of our families and students who are most needy get the supports that they need for not only early childhood developmental supports, but we, by virtue of VPK, we get to identify social emotional behavioral disorders far before they enter school age, and we can actually put the resources and strategies and structures in place to help those students. There's a growing body of research about dyslexia. If you can identify dyslexia during the pre-K years, the formative years, they're utilizing a lot of the strategies. You can actually give students enough tools that they can overcome dyslexia and it will not have an adverse impact on them. So there's, as I said, there's a growing body of research out there about dyslexia in particular. So VPK is something we are incredibly vested in. Unfortunately, there is limited space. And as was shared, we did communicate with families that we were going to a lottery system this year. And the lottery system basically ensured that people who had inside knowledge, either employees or parents who had children already attending a program, did not get an unfair advantage because our previous process was essentially almost a first-come, first-served process where you'd fill out the application, turn it in, and so long as you were within the first few, you were guaranteed a spot. Well, arguably, that we lack equity there for the rest of our community, especially those who may not have a footprint in our public school system yet. So we went to a lottery system, and it's been very successful for us, although we've gotten some feedback. Employees in particular have reached out looking for solutions. We do a very good job of aligning them to external providers and our wait lists. We've been working through those very quickly. I know I had a great conversation with Ms. Wyatt about concerns of how do we get, a cohesiveness for families or continuity for families because of siblings, and so families aren't split between multiple locations. And that's something we're striving to work towards, especially if we can create more permanent VPK environments versus kind of the process we currently have, which is where it's very mobile, very fluid, and very reliant upon available space. So I just wanted the opportunity to address a few things with VPK since the opportunity presented itself here.
One of the things I wanted to clarify too, when you're talking about VPK certificate that the children apply for are utilized in all three programs. So straight VPK means it's just VPK funding through the state. We also have our children use their VPK certificates in Title I and in Head Start because that helps with the funding of the paras and the extraneous supports that we need in those classrooms. So all of them are considered VPK, but the Title I and Head Start have requirements on top of what the state requirements are. To give a picture of what Mr. Hyde is talking about, we had one school that within 15 minutes, by 7:15, it was full. And we had 169 applications for 18 slots, and that's just one school. So, and that will give you a picture of how desperate the need is. So when the parents call frustrated and stressed out, it is because there's a real lack of where they can bring their children. There was a misunderstanding with a lot of our staff that it's part of the school system, and quite frankly, a lot of the parents as well, that they assume because we are on a school campus that it's guaranteed or that we owe it to them, and that it is their right, that they're entitled to it. So we had a really tough time with some people understanding that we were just like any other daycare or preschool system that you would look for. It's just an option. It just happens to be on a school campus. But just because it's there does not mean that anybody's entitled to it. There has to be a process to make it fair for everyone.
Ms. Fields and then Dr. Allen.
I wanted to know, when will the $15 per hour implementation start?
So we have a mandate to begin that, if I recall correctly, no later than October 1st for our employees. I'm looking at the staff. I believe it's the October 1st date. So that's when, but we will probably take effect July 1st, correct? So we'll be ahead of the curve.
So I just want to make sure that everybody's going to be on the same period of going to $15 an hour. Head Start would be on the same cycle.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Allen.
Yeah, and I think that was my question as well, because I'm just pondering, like, minimum wage federally across the board and the variation of state minimum wages, and then how ours has been scaffolded, required to scaffold up, and how that impacted. So that answered that question. I was curious, maybe just for some information now on the accountability element within VPK.
Okay, in regards to testing?
Yeah.
You want to address that one?
The VPK, every VPK provider receives a readiness rate based on when the children take the STAR EL in kindergarten. The preliminary rates for the 2020-21 school year just came out. I'm in the process of verifying those, where I look at our students to make sure every student that we had was indeed served at one of our schools. And they get a readiness rate of 70 and above is passing or considered a high-performing provider, and 70 and below are considered a low-performing provider. And then we provide a strategic plan of how we're going to increase the schools that are below.
Yeah, and I was thinking, because, you know, going on back to your conversation that we're seeing some of the private entities not necessarily sustain, there was some conversation as well that they weren't ready to really push in on the accountability element as well. But I'm curious too, is how you know, we share that data of accountability elements within our VPK as they transition into kindergarten.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's actually something Carrie and I are working on currently, how we are going to go about aligning with kindergarten, with become better partners with principals and understanding what's coming to their classroom. So the same type of things that are expected in K-5 as far as accountability, tracking progress, understanding a multi-tiered system and implementing supports, all of that happens in pre-K as well. So we utilize the Teaching Strategies Gold platform, which includes our curriculum and any kind of assessment that we would want to do to make sure we know where our students are. And that is tracking them towards their progress of being able to meet the assessment at the end. So with the Teaching Strategies Gold, we actually have a report card that will print out where each child ends at the end of the year. It will discuss what skills they've mastered, and then it even goes to the progression of showing what skills they should be mastering next. So it gives a progression from birth all the way to the 3rd grade. So when our students in preschool, it can go into their CUME folders, so the people who get those children will have that in their folders to address, to decide where they need to start with those kids. Now, again, remembering we're only serving about 2,000 of the 8,000 that rise every year.
Yeah.
It's a drop in the bucket. We are working with the ELC. We've got a great partnership with them, and we talk frequently about what we need to do to help support the outside entities as well as our own, and how we can have those same kinds of conversations.
Great. And I think that would have been my follow-up question,
Yes,
is
yeah.
how those private entities then are
Yeah.
sharing that as well.
We are having those conversations now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ms. Fields?
I had one more question indirectly, and this might be for another conversation, but I know that you just referenced that ELC gave an increase. And I know that Florida First Start was no longer funded, if I'm correct. And so what are we doing to at least provide some level of service for those families that benefited from Florida First Start? And I know that it's a very valuable program, especially for parent involvement.
Yes, ma'am. So again, I think it's important to note that the decision to terminate that program had nothing to do with a school district decision.
Correct.
Had everything to do with the elimination of funding. And my understanding was this was messaged for almost 2 years, that this funding, in fact, it was funded by ELC through some remaining funds that they had, even though the state did not fund it, to bring it along one additional year during 2021, if I recall correctly. And so, ladies, do you mind speaking to Ms. Fields' question about what options do families have now that that program has been disseminated?
I had the same
Or
exact question.
dismantled?
They have options with the private providers that the ELC supports, and we're working closely with the ELC to revamp and re-energize and come up with a different way to meet the needs, the way we are doing it with the 4 Florida First Start locations.
We currently absorbed those employees, so they are still with us.
Correct.
And we're actually looking to use one of them to expand the kid care support system for after school. So we're looking at expanding that program, but as far as meeting the needs of the families that were in Florida First Start, one of the things that we're looking at as well is how we could go about partnering with the ELC to write for the early Head Start grant and start serving our children that way. Right now, it's not available. It's not open for us to do anything, but when it does come open, we are considering that as well.
Thank you.
Early Head Start grant?
Early Head Start, serves infant toddlers.
Wow, okay.
Birth to 3.
Yeah, birth to 3.
Thank you, ladies. Sorry I put you on the spot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Dodge is here with a policy update, or several policy updates, excuse me.
Good afternoon. I have brought forward for you, or the superintendent actually has brought forward for you, 3 board bylaw updates, an update to our employment of instructional staff policy that is required by a statute change. However, we did not put it on the consent agenda because we, as a school district, go on beyond what the statute requires in terms of we do this kind of background check on every employee and not just those who have direct contact with students. And then the final one is an update that aligns with the previous policies you've seen regarding how we collect, how we collect what we put in a file when there's an anti-harassment or an anti-discrimination charge. Do we have any questions?
Mr. Wilson?
Actually, I have a question about an item on the agenda this evening. Is it okay if I address that now, or would you rather I wait?
If it's not related to this, can we wait until board
Sure.
comments for new business? Thank you.
I think that is on this one, it's the 3rd board bylaw.
So the question is, can I? Since it's here,
Yes.
okay. So the question is, we crossed through the 7-day notice requirement, and I'd ask you about that, and you said you could address that for us.
Yes, sir. what Neola was asking us to do was to clarify the statute just has a 7-day publishing requirement, and it does not differentiate between electronic publishing or non-electronic publishing. And so because there were 2 statements in our bylaw, they asked us to clarify that. In discussing it with Ms. Winchester and Ms. Vega, further, because they read everything in the entire agenda. We'll probably, when we bring this back for a final vote, we will put it down to 1 statement so that it's even more clear, because we do electronic publishing. That is our only publishing. And so we just want to make sure that we don't have anything else that makes it confusing for the public.
But, so there will still be at least 7, it will be published 7 days before the event?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Actually,
Dr. Allen.
thank you, Superintendent Hyde. I think that was the question I had as it related to the employee instructional staff policy is, did we go far enough on that policy? And when I read that policy, I would say, yes, we did go far enough and beyond. And it takes me to the DOE update that we received during the Florida School Board Association that talked about that disqualification list. And digging into that and seeing that, how that juxtaposed well with that process with the disqualification list. I don't know if you want to speak to that in any way.
So the statute put in place a disqualification list, and what we do as a district is we go beyond that, and we don't just look at it in terms of teachers or folks who might traditionally be considered having direct contact with students. We use that for everybody.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Fields?
Removal out of school suspension. Are we there? Are we there with that one yet? Is it okay to ask you a question there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what is the definition of preponderance of evidence standards?
I'm going to refer to Mr. Murphy. I think he addressed that last time, but if you would, please.
Can you hear me? I'm not sure that I've ever addressed that issue in front of this body, but a preponderance of the evidence is a measure of evidence that is required in order to establish a fact or an issue before a body. And so there are different standards of proof, burdens of proof, and we're referring to clear and convincing, preponderance of the evidence. Preponderance of the evidence, I would say, is a lesser than clear and convincing, or beyond a reasonable doubt, as you are maybe aware in this criminal context. So it's just a burden of proof that the prosecutor, whoever's presenting the case, would have to establish in front of the body that makes the decision.
So the legal definition, to go a bit further, is that it essentially assures that once we have met at least, that we have demonstrated there's at least 50% chance that the claim is true, you have reached a preponderance of evidence. That's how it's legally defined. Thank you, Google. So it's essentially a threshold that with all the evidence presented, is there at least 50% assurance or more that we believe that the claim is true?
So
The
it's
allegation
basically-
is factual.
Basically vetting the situation and
It's affording due process. I mean, I believe we go much further than the preponderance of evidence, but again, we take, most of our language is derived from Neola and recommendations based off their interpretation of the legal standard and the statutes and existing policy and practice. If it would benefit, I mean, I don't know if we could add a definition of preponderance to the current policy, along with
that's what
other
I was
definitions,
wondering.
that might be beneficial.
It may be beneficial to do that.
that's what I was gonna say. I think it needs to be defined.
I want to say it's defined in statute, but I will look that up, and this will have to come back to you again, so I'll communicate with you prior to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dodge. Ms. Miller?
Preponderance is a matter of interpretation, so I think if there was a more measurable, something that we could measure that by, because that's going to catch us legally, I think. but I don't know how you do that. So maybe with your explanation, it'll help define.
I'll do some more research into that.
Yeah, I think Ms. Dodge's response is a good one, yes.
But just to clarify, that language was already in that policy, and we're just adding it to another section, so we've always used.
Had preponderance?
Preponderance, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Dodge.
Thank you.
Oh, Ms. Fields.
Oh, sorry.
Under the copy of travel and per diem, why is school board members scratched out, deleted? I'm sure there's an easy, simple answer.
We removed that policy from this because there were some changes that had come from staff after the deadline. So we're going to bring that back to you at another meeting. But the language was changed because there was statutory change that requires school board members to their travel to be looked at in a different way. And I think you remember we put that into the policies a couple years ago.
Thank you.
You're done, Ms. Dodge.
All right, thank you.
Last item here on the superintendent's report, the school staffing allocation plan update. You will get an additional one. I will make a recommendation that we pull the item on the staffing plan off this evening's agenda. I had discussed that with Chair Wyatt, previously. I had also discussed this with Vice Chair through subsequent conversation. But the school allocation plan update, I think it's important for us to continue to show you how this iteration will impact the district for future years. As we talked about, there is no way for us to, in 1 year, I shouldn't say there's no way, had the district invested in Powerball and we were flush with resources, then we could have adjusted all of our school-based staffing in 1 year. Unfortunately, we're not in that position at this time. I do keep playing, just so you're aware, so the district will benefit at some point. And the idea here is, how do we start to impact and ensure that our schools have the right resources that they need to adequately support our staff and our students? And the board is committed to this. You've already approved the transition to a new staffing allocation plan. We've had long conversations about this, but the board was interested in seeing some specific examples. So I will do that for you here today, with the understanding that in July, you will get the breakout by school. There is some level of that here for elementary schools, but it's not comprehensive yet for middle and high. And I'll address some of the special program schools as well at the end. To summarize for elementary school staffing, if you recall, in the overall changes that were summarized for you, we added an 11-month designation to an assistant principal. That will be one of the more costly transitions for us that we'll have to implement over multiple years. We added a note regarding the addition of 1 unit at the enrollment of 800+ students for the principal's choice of an art, music, or PE employee. We added a note that schools under 350 will be allocated an additional 0.5 art and 0.5 music. And I'll remove the allowable conversion note of the para network manager and para basic for teacher network manager, and added not a note about applicability for para basic era and para media conversion for media specialists. This gets back to a conversation we had, 8 months ago, when we talked about the fact that at times in the school allocation model, we tried to give flexibility to schools. And what happens, though, is we allocate a certain level of a position. The school then makes a decision and to convert that position, to split fund it, or to enhance other positions, or to do something different and unique. And that gets lost in the narrative. And because that position gets lost in the over allocation model, the perception is they never got that position, and so they look for an enhancement again. So the whole point here is we made sure that we put restrictions on what types of positions could be converted or cashed in or moved. And part of this is, again, we want to provide some level of autonomy in decision-making at the school level to allow principals to best address the needs of their students, but with some safeguards in place that we ensure that we're not creating a hardship or other issues. And some of these positions are much-needed positions. You cannot eliminate the network manager position on a campus, especially as a school district like ours prepares to go one-to-one. We cannot allow those positions, just as you would not expect the school to eliminate the principal's position, a bookkeeper's position, or something as simple as their SRO. We would never allow those positions to be converted or transferred or cashed in. So it does provide some bumper rails to prevent those things from happening. From the Office of Acceleration and Innovation, We added target to the PTM calculations to represent what the enrollment is currently reaching for as opposed to definitive. We removed teacher allocations from the program staffing model, and teaching units will be staffed similarly to traditional schools. This is also somewhat applicable to our academy programs, so I'll go ahead and take the opportunity here to address this. As we've talked about before, a lot of our programs, when they were initially created, or because of a legacy effect, have continued to benefit from additional positions, whereas their counterpart programs have not. For example, Haines City. Haines City IB was modeled after Bartow IB, and so Haines City gets an additional 18.5 units added to their total school allocation. As a result of that, and then you have Cambridge, who's received 0 additional allocation units to support that program. So what the district did, and you heard Ms. Jenkins and Mr. Pitts address this at the previous meeting, what we have now started to do, and I should say Mr. Barrows and JD and others were at the table as well, and thank you to all for all their hard work. But what they've done is they are now billing 50% of those positions back to the school fund. The whole intention of schools generating revenue from these programs was to allow them to grow the programs, incentivize them to grow the programs so that they're self-sustaining. So at this point, at least half of those 18 positions are being accounted for in their budget through their existing resources. The other half will continue to be a discussion as we move forward to create better equity. So in that case, as we look at other programs, and it at times is misleading because when you look at Bartow in particular, Bartow does get the 18.5 additional positions, but the school itself in its totality is arguably, if we were to make a claim that the school is overstaffed, they're overstaffed potentially by 7 or 8 positions in total. Because you're inclusive of Summerlin, you're also inclusive of the main campus, you're inclusive of Bartow IB. So we have to be a little bit careful in how we address these and adjust these, but we will. We're going to set a minimum classroom size expectation. We are not comfortable with making the adjustment at this time, simply because to do so, every teacher you remove significantly impacts the overall schedule on the campus right now, adversely impacts the schedule, and potentially could put a student in a position where, because of the complicated nature of their academic and extracurricular schedules, they may not get access to the courses that they need. And so this will be a slow trickle. As we said, we were charging 50% of those positions back to their budget. That was the strategy we had agreed tentatively to utilize this year. However, we will do program enhancements to the other programs, and we'll start the process of, because again, if we look at an allocation model where we look at the particular program, and thank you again to the board for allowing me to move everyone to either a head of school or head of program designation, with the understanding that they're now going to be held accountable for not only maintaining their current program, but for the outcomes and also the growth of their programs. We don't want small programs. We want these to continue to flourish. We want them to thrive. We want to see high retention rates, high passing rates. We also want to see their enrollment increase. With increased enrollment, we can start to allocate staff somewhat differently, again, based off what they're generating in the program itself. And those students should not necessarily always be coming from the feeder pattern. They should be coming from outside through school choice, which is the actual difference maker in the FTE calculation. So that being said, we're making those adjustments. We're also making some adjustments to Winter Haven. We have another program where we had some additional staff remaining. I spoke again this morning with my team to ensure that we're going to be able to reassign a 10-month or 12-month secretary, a counselor, and we've already addressed the 12-month administrator at Winter Haven. So they'll pick up the additional counselor for their program for Cambridge. They'll pick up the secretary for that program, and then again, I'll work through the staff to look at their allocation and their total student enrollments, which is approximately 350 students at this time in Cambridge, and then determine what, if any, additional units they need to benefit from. So I need some time to have that conversation with them. But it is important for us to address these things. A good conversation and a good example of this today arose. I was contacted by CFAA. Inadvertently, through the staffing allocation model, they somehow lost their nurse. And so they reached out today. fed it back to staff. We're going to make sure that they have their nurse. This is different. It's not a shared campus, obviously. We need to have an LPN or a registered nurse on that campus for students given its location. It serves over 450 students a day. It's a strong program. It needs to have those resources. So this is getting back to that conversation again. We started 8 months ago. As difficult as it's been, this long road of how do we create equity across our programs. And then again, the rest of today, I'll talk to you about how we're creating equity between school levels. So we're trying to, kill two birds with one stone this year, and it's going to take us 2 years to address school level needs as we move forward, and I'll address that here in a moment. Middle school staffing, the proposals to change for one school counselor for every 500 students, starting from the current allocations of counselors. I should address here, I know there's been some confusion and some questions about LEAs. LEAs were positions that were created. Unfortunately, we have found ourselves in a position that IDEA budget was no longer sufficient to carry all of those employees. As a result, we've had to address LEAs a little differently. We're going to sustain LEAs minimally for the next 2 years. However, over the course of this year, let me rephrase what I just said. We will sustain the positions over the next 2 years. The LEA designation is going to go away. We will phase those employees back into the school system in accordance with our allocation model, our school-based allocation model, as either school counselors. We do benefit as a school district. We actually have a counselor job description that's counselor for ESE. So they can either, if they qualify, they can move into that role. If not, they can move into a staffing specialist role. The duties and responsibilities are commensurate with both of those roles. They're far more appropriate. The reason why we added LEAs a number of years ago is we did not adequately staff our schools with counselors and or other supports like staffing specialists, behavior specialists, and as a result of that, we ended up finding ourselves in a position where we were forced to create an LEA position and fund it at IDEA. Because we're going to a new allocation model, this will help rectify some of that. These are existing positions that are fully funded. We'll be able to move those positions back to the school level, move them out of IDEA. Some of them will be absorbed, obviously, depending on the position, depending on the school, depending on the number of staff assigned. They could be funded from a variety of different sources, but they will be adequately funded. So I know that's a complicated way to say we have a position that's going to be phased out, but those employees will be retained within one of the two new designations. They'll continue to provide the same level of support and services for our students as they currently do. Ms. Miller?
We had a lot of conversation about the LEAs because that came out, and I know we have administrative positions changing that may or may not have communicated that well before our employees saw that. My question is, I'm not sure what the staffing specialist job description looks like or the requirements, but we have LEAs that are trained in that role. I would hate for them to lose that because they don't have a master's or they don't have a certification to be a staffing specialist. I'd like to define.
That's not a concern.
Okay.
The staffing specialist role does not require a mandate, a specific level of degree attainment. It really is the job duty itself and what's entailed within it. What is different is the ESE counseling. So not all EAs would qualify as LEA counselors. That's why there are two options to place them in. Both serve us long-term in the school allocation model.
And we'll be able to communicate to the LEAs now what those job requirements will be in case they want to look into becoming a guidance ESE.
Absolutely.
My question is currently, and we talked about this, what the model should look like or you're moving to is very much what other districts do, and it's a more supportive model where the child belongs to the entire school, and we're no longer saying that's an ESE child, go take care of an LEA. So I understand that, but I just shared that even though that's how it should be happening, unfortunately, the current status is not modeled that way in every school. So I think it will take some time to create the culture of this. We're not siloing these kids off to people that everyone will be involved in their progress. My one question is, will these positions stay at the site-based level because current staffing specialists have to handle multiple schools?
So right now, they will be site-based at this time. Some of the regionals will still be allowed to assign staff or some of these staff as they currently do based off the totality of need. It does not make sense in certain environments to have a full-time LEA when there aren't enough students to justify that level of support. And I think that's a concern we were looking to address as well. So long-term, I think this solution will address that. Staffing specialists are school-based, school-assigned. However, how they're assigned may not be inclusive of the school budget itself. It could be a district-level position that's assigned and based off need, much like Ms. Cummings does. She has additional itinerant staff outside of the allocation for each school for art, music, and chorus and orchestra that she can assign based off the needs and the number of sections that are needed to be covered within a school. So just like we have coaches at the district level we can assign for instructional purposes, it's not uncommon for a school district to have additional supports like staffing specialists that they, or an LEA or other roles that they assign to schools based off the totality of need with this number of students that are being served. And we have to also include, outside of just the total of students that are being served, what are the needs of the students? Because you could have 10 students that have fairly significant needs or highly significant needs that justify more supports than 50 students that have low-touch needs. So it's something we have to look at comprehensively, and Ms. Castle will be focusing on that as well.
Thank you.
High school staffing, the proposals to change for one school counselor per 500 students, starting from the current allocation of counselors. We did change the administrative allocation for each program to head of school, head of program, and a commandant respectively. We did that previously. We added the phrase target to the PTM to show what program enrollment is reaching for, striving for, and we added verbiage to the opportunity to upgrade AP of choice into head of program role. Learning supports changes. We changed the formatting ESE unit guidelines to list and format for clarity. We removed Roosevelt from the Learning Center classification and moved it to multiple pathways, updated the verbiage regarding LEA facilitators, and again, that will be updated even further to reflect the transition into new roles. My commitment to you and to all of our employees is that by the end of the year, everyone will be satisfactorily placed into a new assignment that aligns better to our school allocation model. If not, no one will jeopardize their position. So we will have a plan in place in case someone does not fit the needs or wants to pursue a different option or opportunity within the district. It will be in 23-24 will be the year where by the end of this 22-23 school year, we will have everyone placed. So we will use a phased-in approach, as I've shared with you before, because of the cost analysis and also our ability to recruit. And let's be honest, some of these positions are hard to find and hard to retain. And so we need to spend some time actually building our toolbox to make sure that we're ready to recruit these individuals. I will say that the team sitting in front of you today, the cabinet level, have done an absolute amazing job. We are at the point now where we have pretty much solidified all of our contract negotiations. And all the language is now with our unions. They'll be going out. We'll have some further discussion with you today about our contracts and some other aspects of negotiations. But I'm very proud of the work that they've done because it puts us ahead of so many others. And that stability does serve as a recruitment initiative for us. That when people are looking around the state and they realize that our district has ratified a contract or will ratify a contract, they know exactly what the pay schedule will look like. They know what their benefits are going to look like. It does serve as an opportunity. It gives our HR staff and our recruitment team the tools and resources they need to aggressively go out and recruit people to come to Polk County, and as a retention initiative. And I think the board's going to be very pleased with what we were able to address this year with our collective bargaining units. So in year 1 and 2, we're going to address the disparities between school levels that presently exist and are not in alignment with the newly proposed allocation model. We'll begin transitioning current staff to new roles and titles, as I discussed with the LEAs extensively. Years 3 and 4, we'll start to address additional school counselors, social workers, staffing specialists, and school psychologists that presently exist and are not in alignment with the newly proposed allocation model. We have these positions. We simply don't have a sufficient number of them to best address the needs of our students and support our staff. We'll also begin to address front office staff or clerical staff, especially at the elementary level. One of the things we found as we went through and reviewed our allocation summaries is that at the elementary level, we really constricted how we staff them. So whereas a middle school and a high school, for example, have a bookkeeper, they have a principal secretary, they have a registrar, in many of our elementary schools, there is one clerical person who addresses all of those jobs. And so this is an opportunity for us to start to kind of allow and provide additional staff to our schools to offset this workload. So as I said, we'll start to address front office staff and clerical staff that presently exist but may not be in alignment with the newly proposed model. So this is an example here. I know it's hard to see. That's why I gave you a printout as well, was that you see the elementary schools here in that row that says total. That's their total projected enrollment for the upcoming school year. This is how I was able to calculate our cost, our estimated costs to address this. So if you see here, based off their enrollment, these schools have more than 500 students, so they would all benefit from the additional PE para. Only 4 or 5 schools would benefit, or 4 schools, excuse me, a total of 5 positions would benefit from additional counselors. 12 schools would benefit from the discretionary position. 4 of our schools would benefit from the additional art, music, and PE positions. Only 1 school would receive an additional assistant principal. That does not mean, this does not include the adjustment of 10-month APs and moving them to 11-month. This is just simply a new position that they qualify for at Horizons due to their large enrollment size. And then you see the 10-month additional secretaries. There are a total of 13, but 12 schools. Again, Horizons size would justify receiving additional positions. So here's what it might look like. So the way I broke this out was I looked at our largest schools first. And so schools that have 700 or more students, obviously from my position, I have to figure out who gets what and when. So I split the positions across 2 years based off student enrollment and size and arguably need. So in year 1, we would address the paraeducators, 13 total paraeducators that would be reassigned that would be added to the allocation model for the schools with 700 or more students. 5 counselors are addressed in that year, 1 assistant principal, 5 10-month secretaries, and 4 art, music, and PE. The total cost, if approved and voted for in July, would be an estimated $1.3 million for the school district. In 23-24, we continue to try and level the disparities between our school levels as it relates to staffing allocations. We address for schools that have 600 to 700 students, 15 additional paraeducators for physical education, the 12 discretionary positions, and the 10-month secretaries. There's 8 of those for a total of almost $1.6 million. In 2024-25, we would add additional counselors to achieve a 1 counselor to 500 student ratio. We would work to address half of those needs. In 2025-26, we would address the second half of those needs. Again, we would do it based off school enrollment and size. We would add staffing specialists or counselors to or the counselor for ESE to elementary schools without one. And we would add, same thing, 25-26 for remaining schools, because right now there is not an LEA in every single school. And that means for some of these schools, they may not have a need for a full-time position. That's where the itinerant support would be assigned by the school district. So when you look at just cost analysis, and I only use school counselors at this time because I need a little bit more time to finish calculating what we would look at for staffing specialists and other positions. But for school counselors, if we addressed 15 additional counselors in 2024-25, it'd be an additional $1.2 million based off today's costs. In 25-26, we would be adding another 18 counselors to schools with 700 or more students, and we would get $1.4 million. So it's a slow roll to start adding staff, but desperately needed staff to our schools, and it allows us to be a little bit more intentional and to plan our budgets accordingly, quite frankly. This is where we get into a conversation with our collective bargaining units. We have negotiated in good faith all along, and they've been really receptive to the concept that they realize that part of what you do to create a positive culture anymore for your workforce is not solely contingent upon salaries. It's not solely contingent upon pay. Working conditions are one of the primary factors that allow companies to retain their employees. The only way I can continue to address working conditions is to address the workload issues that many of our schools and our staff feel that they have. And so this allows us a slow roll, a manageable process to recruit, retain, and address those issues and build momentum as we move forward. After 25-26, we begin to address other needs in the district as needed, but that will be shared with you again in July with a prescribed timeline and estimated costs for those positions. Again, there are several positions that are included in here, but what you can expect to see in July, you will get it well before the board meeting, is a total by school and a timeline for each school. So you'll see all the positions listed for Alturas Elementary School as an example, just because it jumps off the page at me. And you'll see counselors, you'll see all the positions that we've listed, and you'll see the years above the year in which we would anticipate being able to add those positions to their school. And then you'll see the costs below. And then we'll summarize the total costs for you so you can kind of get a sense of what we're committing to over the next few years. And part of this is, again, looking internally, where can we find some savings? We've been very efficient this year. at trying to make sure that anything we've done, we've been able to pay for. Very proud of the staff and the work that they've done, and it's allowed us to be very aggressive this year in some other areas. So I'm very proud of that and the work that we've done thus far. So I appreciate your patience. I know the board's accustomed to getting this well ahead of time, but respectfully, the staffing plan that the board's received repeatedly in the past, there haven't been a lot of substantive changes to. And this has taken us a little bit more time because at the same time we're trying to address this topic, we're also addressing a variety of other topics before us, including negotiating multiple contracts simultaneously. So it's a lot of work, but we're proud of it, and very pleased that the board sees the value in this, because you've already said, yes, move forward with the planning and development. So I'm excited to bring to you in July the final summary and cost analysis, so you'll be able to plan with us accordingly. Ms. Fortney.
I just want to make sure we clarify, we're not taking the LEAs immediately away and placing those burdens back on the school counselor.
I've already said that repeatedly.
I just want to
and-
make sure
and
everybody
the administrator's got
understands
a
that.
memo to that same effect.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Fields.
When you do the breakdown of what's being added and the costs, can you also show where those funds are coming from?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I can anticipate where the funds are coming from.
Right.
Because some may be funded out of federal programs, IDEA and other areas, so I'll do the best I can to align where the funding comes from, or at least anticipate where funding may come from.
Correct.
Yes,
And then I know we'll get that well in advance of the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ms. Wyatt,
Thank you for taking my call this morning.
you are very welcome.
I just wanted to kind of, some of the things you and I talked about is that next year we'll hopefully get this March, April at the latest, but it sounds like more like January, February, so there's time to plan.
The goal
for
right
moving
now is to
forward.
get this to the board in
So,
February.
I'm excited for that next year. But if just before it comes to us in July, specifically looking at some of the high schools, I know when we talked, it shows 18 units for the IB programs, but it actually sounds like it's 8 because some of them are seats or positions that they've earned because of the student number. So if that can just be cleaned up and that before it comes to us in July.
Absolutely.
And also if we can see any of those attractor units that we're giving, we can see who's paying for them. So I know we're charging them for some of them. So if there could just be a note on those as this is where that funding's coming from.
Absolutely. And my recollection is everyone is being charged for at least half of their positions this year, correct?
So if we can just see that breakdown. I said 2 years ago that I would not vote to approve a plan again that had the disparities between IB and Cambridge. But I also am not going to vote for something that's going to hurt kids. And I know that with staffing being this far down the line, that to do it now would hurt kids. However, if it comes to us next year and is not fixed,
I can assure
it'll be a
you,
different conversation.
I can assure you we're fixing it now.
So, but I have great faith and I appreciate your time talking
ma'am.
me through it and talking me off the ledge.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
thank
My
you.
pleasure. You were not on the ledge. Mr. Wilson.
Just a thought. For anyone who believes that Powerball is an investment, I may be able to help. Not exactly textbook investing. That is by a
To
preponderance.
be clear, the district is not investing in Powerball.
That is
Mr.
by
Hyde
a
is
preponderance
investing.
of my experience.
I just would also like to note that he did tell me last meeting that if he hits the Powerball, he's going to donate his salary back
I
to the
did.
district and that he's not quitting. So I just would like that on the record that he has told me he'll donate it back.
I will
and
say it
not
right
leave.
here on the record. If I win Powerball, I will remain in my position. I will donate my salary back in the form of student scholarships to be honored at the end of the school year.
So,
So if that somehow brings me good karma, good luck,
And,
Then
and I
so be it.
reiterate, you may want to visit with me. That's not great. That's not a great investment plan.
Madam Chair, at this point, that concludes the superintendent's report.
thank you, Superintendent Hyde. All right. Were there any questions on the information items? Donation report, Head Start service report, Head Start BBK grant. Ms. Fields?
I wanted to know, Superintendent Hyde, why are there so many new positions on the Head Start? It looks to me like, in looking at the job descriptions, there were a lot of new positions?
Actually, if Lori's still here, I'd like to ask her to come back forward. But many of those positions are existing positions that are presently unfilled, was my recollection. They were actually within the org chart. We had said that we missed the opportunity to make any revisions to the org chart because I promised the board I would not do that. So these were existing positions that she is looking to fill at this time.
So it's not new, maybe revised or something?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions on information items? Okay, and we will now go through, actually, before we go through the board meeting agenda, I want to go to new business real quick. Florida School Board Association, their fiscal year runs July 1st to June 30th. So every June, we vote on who our board of directors member will be and an alternate, both for the board of directors for FSBA and for the advocacy committee. Currently, Ms. Fortney serves as the board of directors, and the alternate is Ms. Miller. And then I am the advocacy liaison, and then I believe Ms. Miller is also the alternate for that. I've thoroughly enjoyed advocacy, but I also am very willing to, if somebody else wants an opportunity, to give it up. So do we have any nominations for board of directors?
I'd like to continue in that.
All right. Is everyone okay with Ms. Fortney still serving in that capacity?
Yes.
All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any nominations for alternate? Ms. Miller, you seem to love being an alternate for these. She's been the
I will be the alternate again if or Sarah, do you have an idea?
I have a nomination, Dr. Allen.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, ouch. Just kidding. No, that's totally fine because two alternates probably is not a good idea.
Doctor, is that something
Dr.
you'd be
Allen.
willing
Yeah,
to,
Ms. Fortney,
to
thank
serve
you.
on?
I'll definitely,
Listen, this is sunshine. We
Agree.
can't talk about this anywhere else. Would you like to do this?
absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so we will have on our agenda tonight then to vote for Ms. Fortney as the Board of Directors member, and then Dr. Allen as the alternate for Board of Directors. Advocacy. Anyone want to do advocacy?
I would like to nominate Lisa Miller.
Lisa Miller, would you like to do advocacy?
I would love to do advocacy.
All right.
Thanks, Fortney. That made up for throwing me out.
Just a reminder, I taught both those softball players you were talking about.
No, all right, you taught everyone. Yes, that's a
We
reminder.
know. Any nominations? So is everyone okay with Ms. Miller for
Let me write that down.
the advocacy liaison? I think that sounds like not hearing any opposition. No real passion for it, but no opposition.
That's me, the advocate. Just write that down.
All right, anyone interested in doing the alternate? We're nominating someone for alternate.
Are you good with that, Ms. Wyatt,
Sure.
being the alternate?
I am
Then I would
happy.
nominate you since you
to serve.
have knowledge.
Is everyone okay with that?
So moved.
All right, so it will be on the agenda tonight for advocacy, Ms. Miller as the advocacy liaison, and then myself as the alternates. All right, so that is, I just want to do that before we go over the agenda. So now we will go over the agenda for this evening. All right, opening items, special recognitions, any questions? I believe we have Ms. Fields reading and Ms. Fortney stepping down. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, any questions on the minutes? Section D.
Can we get back to recognition? Is Ms.
Yes.
Fortney stepping down? I know there are Special Olympians that will be here, but I don't know that we have anything to give them. Do we need Ms. Fortney to go down to greet them? How do you prefer, Madam Chair?
I think she's stepping down for all of it, I
Okay, good.
believe. Okay. Is what we normally do.
And do we have anything?
I don't know.
Who would
I-
we ask?
Believe Coach Talbot said he would be here this evening for Special Olympics, and Diane Taylor.
We
Would
can
have
find
contact, but
out
we
if
can
there's
find out.
something.
Alright. After minutes, new administrators. Is F? Any questions? All right, sections G through I.
Can we go back to new administrators?
Yes, ma'am.
Superintendent Hyde, I know we have a lot of administrators, but I know that we're going to take the time to honor them And they can recognize their families and all that?
Yes, ma'am, they've all been invited. And so I know that some will be present, some will not be present, but yes, ma'am,
Thank you,
we've afforded them the opportunity.
thank you.
And that's for both the new administrators and the principal moves?
That is correct.
Okay.
And just if I could clarify, there are, while it looks like there's a lot of administrative changes, it is respectively a domino effect. So one school in particular, we look at Jewett, that had a mid-year resignation. An internal candidate applied, was selected. He was presently principal at Socrum Elementary School. So you start to see this trickle effect. So 21 names seems like a lot of changes, but most of them were driven based off a vacancy or a change in placement, and it's just a resulting domino effect that impacts the total number. So.
Thank you.
I think I was just speaking of bodies.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
instead of them all crammed
I
up
had been
here.
asked that question before, that, wow, is 21 a large number? And Ms. Wyatt was a party to that conversation with someone else from the community, so I just seized the opportunity to clarify. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and next will be, let's see, we did G and I. Are there any questions on G or I? All right, sections J through L. Sections M through N. Sections O and P. Yes.
To abstain from voting on that.
Yes. P4, the Polk State College Dual Enrollment Agreement. Thank you. And I'm assuming you'll fill out the paperwork as required. No. Thank you. Listen, we've given John a hard task to be in charge of us for 2 weeks, so let's, I know. I told him, I've called him more, I think, in the last 2 weeks than I've called Wes in probably the last 2 months, just because everything happens when he leaves town. Alrighty, and I did confirm Superintendent Hyde, Winter Haven High School it's their basketball team. That one was not listed originally, but the basketball coach said, hey, don't forget to approve this earlier, so.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming it's, and then section Q for action agenda items. Ms. Miller?
Madam Chair, I would, or actually Superintendent Hyde, if you could just describe this evening what that INVO Q6 will look like, as I throw my mint back at you. Because when people see INVO, there's a lot of INVOs that come up, and they need to understand what this is for.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in the future, we'll make a very distinct change in the titling to ensure whether it's INVO program or INVO staffing, because it is different. And you're absolutely right, because we had 3 INVO contracts on the most recent workshop, and I know that we had some great conversation about the various aspects and what they were intended to do to support. So, but it does lend itself to a lot of confusion.
Thank you. And on Q2, Ms. Fields, will you make that motion for Kathleen? And would you like to read or just speak about
I'll just do my
Mr.
letter.
Jackson? Perfect.
The letter.
Awesome. And so for that, how we've been doing it, of course, we'll take the vote and then ask the family if they want to come down and speak and take a picture. All right. And then policy updates. Any questions? And we will take those one at a time. And then superintendent report. Superintendent Hyde, do you have a report?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And attorney's report. You even get an item for us this week.
Yes, a very
Look
brief
at you.
report. It'll be very brief.
Awesome. Thank you. And Ms. Matthews, any report from you? Thank you, ma'am. And then we will have board members' reports and public comment. Any other questions on the agenda? Right. And I did get confirmation, Lynn, that P4 is now Q7, so it is on the action agenda. All right. So I know we have a couple other things to do this afternoon, but I do quickly want to take some time to hear from board members, because I know we had FSBA conference this week and several meetings over the past month or so that I'd love to get updates on. So anybody want to start? Ms. Fortney?
Yes, Dr. Allen and I attended the joint conference. Mr. Hyde joined us as a superintendent. Group also met, FADS, and actually we just installed a new president, Thomas Kennedy, out of Citrus County, and elected the new board. Terry Castillo out of Osceola County is the vice, and Elizabeth Anderson out of Duval is the treasurer, and Tina Surton out of Alachua is the president-elect of FSBA. I was the chair of the equity committee that was reorganized, and I'm now the vice chair, and I cannot remember who was the chair. I apologize. But we did meet as an equity committee, had a place, a space in the conference agenda, which was a first, I believe, where we actually got treated like the finance committee and advocacy committee, et cetera. And we did list our accomplishments. We rewrote the equity statement and got that approved in policy. And so we did accomplish a great deal. They had some really good keynote speakers, which I'm going to let Dr. Allen update you on that.
Awesome. Dr. Allen, you have keynote speakers to update us on?
Well, I wasn't really prepared to
I'm sorry.
address
Okay, then I'll do
the
it.
deep thoughts from our guest keynote speaker. However, I was, well, first of all, it was great to hang out with, fellow board member and our staff, as well as Superintendent Hyde. I do think that Ms. Dodge must pay all these people that come around and really just shed all the accolades and thankfulness of the great work that she's doing. But no, on a side note, I mean, that really is very beneficial to growth as a board member, and thoroughly enjoy it. I would say, sitting in on probably one of the last sessions on Friday, they broke it down by small, middle, or medium, and large districts, and it was a roundtable discussion. And I was quite affirmed in the great work that's happening in Polk County. And I would say on multiple occasions, I heard other board members from other large districts note that, hey, we heard Polk County was doing this, or Polk County did this. So Superintendent Hyde, thank you. Thank you for leading us so well. Other districts are recognizing that, so.
It is, if I may interject, it is every conference I go to that happens. I went to the Finance 2.0, if you remember. And then our Polk people are actually presenters. Mr. Warren.
Mr. Warren, indeed.
Did a really good job.
Yep.
And I know he just loved it when I showed up into that little one. But anyways, he did a great job. So thank you. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both. Any other updates for the board?
I would just want to follow up as well, Madam Chair. Junior Achievement is one of the committees that I have the privilege to serve on. Quite a great opportunity. Wanted to say thank you to State Representative Melanie Bell in organizing a nice meetup with about 20-plus business leaders, community leaders, and did a tour over JA BizTown in Tampa, Finance Park as well. I know Ms. Miller was present. I know Susan was there as well, and several other staff members present, our community liaisons, and some opportunities to lobby and potentially bring JA BizTown Finance Park to Polk County, which would be a great thing.
Isn't that a great place?
Indeed, indeed. My youngest experienced BizTown just a few months ago, and I had a chance to take part and serve as well. A great organization. And speaking of, tomorrow night there is a bowl-a-thon in Winter Haven, hanging out. And
Are you bowling?
I haven't decided. I was definitely going to man the table, but I do have my own bowling ball and shoes to challenge Dan Talbert as well.
Wow.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna have a shooting team, a bowling team. We're pretty athletic school board. I was glad to see that a couple more of you got to attend BizTown this week, because I know just before COVID hit, we actually, I think we had a couple people scheduled to go like the next Monday. But has everyone on the board had a chance to go over there at this point? Has anyone not been able to go? Because I know they're trying to get people over there, but it sounds like everyone's gotten there.
It was great.
Awesome. All righty, any other business that you'd like to share with the board? Seeing none, we do need to have executive session, which I think we will probably move across the hall.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we'll be back in here for discipline at 4 o'clock. So
Ma'am.
this meeting is adjourned.